Good morning, everyone. Good morning to those online, and good morning to those here at the University of Basel. I'm welcoming you to the second day of the EUROVISIONS International Conference, and it's a pleasure to be here, and we have an amazing program.
Yes, in fact, we do have an amazing program of two wonderful roundtables with very interesting invited guests. And in fact, one of them, I'll keep it as a surprise for a couple of minutes. But before I hand it out to my colleague Wilfred, let me just acknowledge that the three countries of the Eurovision's team made it to the final. So, hey Portugal, hey Netherlands, and hey Germany. And now I will hand it to Wilfred.
Yeah, it's amazing that Germany qualified for the final. Yeah. All right, good morning everyone. Good to see you. Before we start with our first Impulse speaker today, I want to point out, in a bit I'm going to actually sit right over there because we're live on social media, so Facebook, YouTube, and I will take your questions. So if you're watching, if there's any questions, I will relay them to the people on site here, and then they will actually ask your question if you have any. Other than that, we have a website. Go there if you want to sign up for our newsletter, follow us on Facebook, and join the community. All right? So let's see whether we can connect with our first speakers, because we're going to talk about social media, digital media, and fairness. So the conference is focused on fairness in general, but we have two very interesting speakers, Giuseppe Mazziotti and Yannick Kirk-Sørensen. Let's see if we can connect. And actually the camera is moving this way now, right? Yeah. There we go. So they can also see the audience. Can I have a wave? Yeah.
Hello, good morning, everyone.
Hey, Giuseppe. Hey, Janik, are you there? All clear?
Yes, I'm here.
All
Yes.
right, okay. Well, without further ado, I'm going to give the stage to you. And in the words of, well, you know who, take it away.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for inviting us to be here with you. We are sorry not to be there in presence in Basel, but I'm sure we will have a fruitful discussion anyway. I hope you can see my slides. My colleague Yannick will use the same presentation. We will try to make you understand what the purposes of our FairMusE project are. First of all, it's an opportunity for us to present the preliminary results of the first couple of years of the project. I'll tell you a little bit more in the next few minutes. Why is fairness a concept that has to be reconsidered in the digital music environment? For a number of very good reasons. The most important of which is probably the fact that music is ubiquitous, is everywhere now. We have never had this kind of accessibility of music productions in history. At the same time, we live in a platform-dominated ecosystem, in a platform-dominated world, and this is increasingly evident considering what the European Union is doing, trying to protect some European values, and you probably are aware of the recent legislation that was passed at the European Union level, and Switzerland is also partly involved in the process, certainly interested as a part of the European family, let's say. Give me a second. So, the project itself is a Horizon Europe project that is funded by the European Commission. It's a 3-year project that recently started its third and final year. The most important goal is to promote fairness in the European music industry by raising mostly awareness about how algorithms, the data collection and the exploitation models of the various streaming services and social media platforms influence music creators and audiences. So on one hand, there is a normative part, the definition of fairness, not only from a legal point of view, but also from a technical point of view. On the other hand, there is a special attention, on one hand, to the production side, the creation side, so how this platform-dominated environment influence the people who compose, produce, and perform music. On the other hand, how this environment, which is data-driven and is dominated, especially in the social media world, by personalized advertisement, influence ultimately the listeners. And that's the reason why we thought that this project would have required, from the outset, lawyers and policy analysts, that it's me, basically, in the project, my team, and some colleagues from several countries in Europe. And on the other hand, the media, data science, economics hub that here is represented by Yannick Sorensen, but has other research leaders from Belgium, from France. You'll hear more from Yannick. As I said, it's a EU-funded initiative. It was ultimately a call. We got the fund in response to a public tender. It's a call. The most important goals of which, as I said, were promoting fairness as a way to promote transparency and sustainability of the European music industry. So fairness is a goal itself, but it comes with other values that are part of this kind of ambitious project of the European Union, whose feasibility is yet to be seen concretely, but it's there at least in terms of values. I'm the coordinator of this a project at Universidade Católica Portuguesa in Lisbon. It's the Global School of Law, where I am a professor in law and innovation. And as I said, there are interdisciplinary hubs, lawyers, economists, media scholars, and data scientists, and a significant participation of industry. We started 2 years ago. We are going to finish in less than a year. We are at the beginning of the second and last phase, which started on the 1st of March. Don't get lost in this graph. It just shows you that, as you can see in the lower part, our final work package, which is number 5, is aimed at building some results. So even though, as I always say when I present this project, the project is still theoretical, abstract, it's not going to produce any technology, any tangible asset per se, but it's not the usual, I would say, rhetorical project that is going to deliver just policy recommendations and who cares. No. As you can see in the lower part of the screen, we will produce a sort of white paper in which we'll try to define what fairness is and can be in this ecosystem from both a legal and technical or economic perspective, but we are going to produce also 3 research outcomes, each of which has to do with the value and the function of data. We are currently working on 3 major results that are going to be demonstrators, proposals that are going to be tested somehow, hopefully, by industry, those companies, those organizations, those stakeholders that will be able to see this and co-create these results with us. So one of the main points of European projects at the moment, this is true in all sectors, the European Commission doesn't just want scholars or researchers to work in the abstract. They want, the Commission wants us to partner with industry in a way that the results do not come from the sky, but have a dimension of industry reality and acceptance that make them useful as soon as the project ends. So one is this music data infrastructure that we are trying to build, and I will briefly describe in the next few minutes. Other results are a music data dashboard aimed at measuring or helping to measure the value of digital music, which is quite mysterious in a way, and ultimately a fairness score. This is a collection of criteria and based on empirical investigations that aim at showing to policymakers, but also to artists mostly, what platform or service treat them best. It's not only a matter of money, how much money do you make on YouTube or on Spotify, but in terms of control over their music and exposure vis-a-vis remuneration. Because we know that the social media axiom has been that, you get as much exposure as you want through the platform, but forget about the money because these platforms are not about the money, even though the social media industry is super rich. This is one of the main contradictions. In terms of investigations from a legal perspective, since the project started on the grounds of a very big copyright reform that has a huge impact on music in 2019 at European level, there is a very important copyright directive that we analyzed and we are still dealing with. We did investigations from a legal point of view in these countries. The two blue countries, Germany and Spain, were added even though they were not originally included in our selection. These are basically the countries where the FairMusE project consortium partners are based. Good diversity on terms of east, west, north, south, big countries, small countries. Why is this investigation important? Well, because from a legal perspective, copyright is not a fully European and unified legislation. It has to be transposed into the legislation of the member states. So, as you can imagine, in the transposition itself, there is some room for maneuver of the various lawmakers that can make the national transposition of a European regulation be slightly different from the other ones. This is a kind of clash and conflict that is unavoidable in the domain of directives, because directives leave the member states with some freedom. This is also part of the problem. There is reluctance at European level to let the European Union take full control of copyright legislation for a number of political and cultural policy related reasons. Just to try to speed up the presentation, the analysis that we did, especially when it comes to how the rights of music creators are handled, granted and then concretely exploited and handled, is based on a summa divisio, we would say in Latin, between the publishing and the recording sectors of the industry. Publishing, there are many experts, many people who know a lot about the industry in the audience, but publishing includes obviously also the composer's rights. Publishing rights are the rights that are abstract in musical composition. So in the Eurovision festival, it would be the songwriters who wrote the songs, the compositions, not necessarily the performing artists, but the people who sit using, I'm exaggerating, I sit on a desk and partner with a publisher normally, and whose rights are split with a publishing house. So we are talking about something abstract that could have been Mozart, could have been Brahms, could have been Debussy, but now it's kind of songwriting these days is very much like mixed with other activities done with digital devices. Very often a composition is not even written down, is directly recorded, but we should not forget that the industry is based on these two sectors that are very clearly separated, because historically the rights of composers and indirectly the right of publishers originated earlier than the recording industry appeared. So this kind of dichotomy has been preserved. There is no way to change it for a number of reasons. So we went through this kind of complexity, inevitably. So every time we access music digitally, we have to clear and deal with the rights of the composers and the publishers and the rights of the record producers. So and in this framework, it's pretty simple to understand that obviously the record companies dominate the market because they produce the main product that is being exploited online, the records. At the same time, for every record to be exploited, to be disseminated, to be made available to the public through Spotify or YouTube, the record must come with the clearance of the publishing rights, so the underlying musical compositions that the performing artists record and incorporate into a sound recording. And here there is a dichotomy, as I said, because when it comes to the publishing rights, the rights of composers, here there is a very important role played by collecting societies. Suiza is the one operating in Switzerland, CI in Italy, Coda in Denmark, and Stasem in France. There are many. They started as communities of composers that were joined by publishers, but essentially what they issued are blanket licenses. So these collecting societies operated in order to give very broad licenses that gave and still give exploiters the permission to use repertoires. So what we observed in the past few years is complete restructuring of this market. There was a time these collecting societies operated at a national level, Coda in Denmark, CI in Italy, Swiss in Switzerland, SGA in Spain. At the moment, the system in Europe is completely different because every society, we have also publishers, licensing entities now, operate on a pan-European basis. So this is a source of huge complexity. Even though, and this is something that comes very clear in analyzing the digital music sector, the recording industry is still the most important part. You should think that when it comes to the value of rights, the recording rights are 4 or 5 times more valuable than the publishing rights. So this is clear when you see how the Spotify revenues are shared. Spotify normally retains 30% of the every euro that is gained by the service, and then the 70% is split among the right holders. Within this 70%, I would say only 1/5 goes into the publishing rights, and you should consider that the publishing rights are normally split between different composers, sometimes different publishers, and each of them might be represented by a different collecting society. So we have this paradox that the smallest part in terms of commercial value of the music industry rights is the most messy in a way. So there is a problem of collective management, whereas at the recording level, we are mostly dealing with individual licensing. We briefly examined the past couple of years the attempt of the European Union to put some order into chaos, I would say, because for a number of reasons, these collecting societies that I presented in the past couple of minutes were not all well equipped to face the digital reality, giving YouTube or Spotify a license, being aware of what kind of repertoires they represented, and how to pair these repertoires, these abstract musical compositions, with the recordings that were made available online. So it was 2014 when the European Union passed a directive that we analyzed as well. Once again, transposed in different countries. We are analyzing 10 countries. And this directive had one chapter that was, and still is, particularly important because it obliges every collecting society representing composers to have a certain capacity in order to license on a pan-European basis in terms of data processing and databases and responsiveness to the request of the streaming services and the social media services. So if I cannot go through the various bullet points, but these are more or less the provisions that are in this directive. If they don't comply with these requirements that are often referred to as a passport, if you don't have a passport, you cannot enter legitimately the digital music licensing market. So we assessed what kind of impact this kind of strictness, this kind of rigor towards the old-fashioned, in many ways, until recently, collecting societies, what impact the directive had. And it's interesting because, in a way, the directive obliged Suiza, and my example, Coda, CIs, guys, SEM, to become more modern. We recently spoke, we held many interviews with collecting societies, even top executives. They told us, you know, we became in the past 10, 15 years data companies, because without data we cannot adequately represent and hold a sort of fair bargaining on behalf of our members. So there has been a huge incentive being placed on these CMOs that were, as I said, old-fashioned until 15 years ago, for them to significantly invest in data processing and in development of digital infrastructures. So now every member of each of these society has much greater level of transparency, and there is also a greater level of transparency in the relationships between the various societies at international level. We also identified failures. Rather than failures, these are developments that were boosted by competition and the inequality between these societies. Obviously, the PRS in the UK, or SACEM or GEMA in Germany, these are big repertoires, big organizations that cannot be compared easily to the smallest collecting societies, because, as I said, every collecting society has a territorial, national origin. So here, the disparity between countries, also in economic terms, is clearly mirrored. So what happened is that in the music industry, that has also a problem of inequalities, because we always had the majors, we always had the indies, we always had the Anglo-American or the Latin American repertoires and the national repertoires. This inequality was somehow boosted by the fact that the regulation, the directive that I mentioned a few minutes ago, left the right holders, the big and the small, the super famous, the unknown ones, with the freedom to choose who can represent their rights. So, unsurprisingly, the majors, even in the publishing sector, got together and created some licensing entities that are now not organized as collecting societies according to the governance rules that the directive from 2014 made mandatory, but in a more corporate-driven way, through joint ventures between the major music publishers, originally at least, and some collecting societies that built these joint ventures. Funny enough, these joint ventures are not entirely based in the European Union. Some of them are in Switzerland, by the way, Liechtenstein and UK. Now the UK, meanwhile, is no longer a EU country. So this is, rather than a failure, a sort of source of frustration for the European lawmakers, because they push so much to have this transformation of rights managers into data companies, but in doing so, they gave them an incentive also to opportunistically find a location in Europe that is not actually always within the European Union. This created an additional problem of inequality between collecting societies. This is a little bit like, there is some inaccuracy, because obviously, imagine that these joint ventures that I'm talking about are all based on agreements between collecting societies, publishers, and they try to build the best package, let's say, in order to partner with the recording industry. I told you from the beginning, the main challenge in terms of transparency and sustainability of the business is pairing the publishing rights with the recording rights. Here we are talking only about publishers and composers' rights. These are joint ventures whose alliances and whose agreements are secret. This is another problem that we have. The most important agreements in terms of representing repertoires are not publicly available. So for us to be able to map these licensing structures in the music publishing sector, this took a little bit of, interviews and, disclosures. It's research based on, it's desk research, but it's also a lot of empirical research. So I recently presented with Yannick this diagram in Denmark, and the Nordisk Copyright Bureau, where CODA also sits, told me, Now we are no longer organized as a bureau. We are now part of one of these more colored aggregations of repertoire called Polaris. So at the moment we have the French Orange aggregation where SACEM partnered on an exclusive basis with Universal, the biggest music publishing group. Mint is based actually in Suiza and is partnering with CESAC. CESAC is actually small, but it's a US-based organization, but it has the biggest names of the pop and rock sectors. ICE is interesting because it's an experiment coming from PRS, UK, STEAM, Sweden, and GEMA, Germany. It has become probably the biggest and most important data processing powerhouse for the collaboration with the recording industry and with the social media and music streaming services. The other gray aggregations are all being absorbed by the big ones. So hopefully this slide gives you an idea of the concentration of the repertoires that were ultimately dictated by the ability of these biggest joint ventures to help the right holders in musical compositions to partner with the recording side, but even more importantly with Spotify, the like, and YouTube and other social media. To conclude, and then give the floor to my colleague Yannick. Here, this kind of repertoire fragmentation that I try to make you aware of comes obviously with data fragmentation. There is a structural misalignment between the content identifiers being used for the musical compositions, the musical work, the ISWCs, the International Standard Musical Work Code, and the most important identifiers. The most important identifiers here are produced by the recording industry. The sound recording identifiers are called International Standard Recording Codes, better known as ISRCs. And these are basically genetically produced together with the release of a record, even by the indies, let's say the entirely self-produced creators. The problem we have at the moment is that this metadata, we can call this metadata, even though the metadata is much broader as a concept, this is the most important data for a musical composition and a sound recording. There is no alignment, meaning that in the vast majority of cases, the sound recordings that are being used online do not come with the identification of the musical compositions that they incorporate. This is for a number of political and economic, commercial reasons that the project is trying to clarify. This is my last slide in which I try to give you an idea of the complexity of the data scenario. In orange, on the lower left side of the slide, we have the data and the approach to data and licensing of the social media services and of the DSP, digital service providers, means essentially the streaming industry. In purple, we have the publishing rights, the recording rights, and the performer rights. This is basically the scenario of the right holders. All the music creators that have a legitimate claim under the law to have remuneration, to receive remuneration from the digital exploitation of the rights. If you read this slide, you understand, first of all, that there is a kind of lack of coordination, that the center of the industry, somehow the recording sector, the recording sector is a sort of intermediary between the publishing sector and then the digital exploitation side of the picture. Here, the anomaly, since I heard there is a lot of emphasis on social media, is that social media, when they started nearly 20 years ago now, they started as user-generated content platform. They still are, but in doing so, they relied on a copyright immunity at the beginning that in the European Union ended only a few years ago. This kind of copyright exemption structure gave them the possibility of scaling up and imposing their data structures to the data infrastructure of the music industry, to a point that it was nearly impossible, it's still very difficult, especially for the publishing rights, to identify their compositions in this social media industry. It's the situation with streaming services is a little bit better because from the beginning, the so-called DSPs were forced to negotiate ex-ante licenses with the music right holders. This made them adopt at a much earlier stage the data of the music industry. Now, we are elaborating some policy suggestions, the most important of which is that there should no longer be this misalignment between musical compositions and their codes and sound recordings. Sounds a little bit naive. We are trying to engage with the industry experts, with the stakeholders, in order to elaborate this kind of suggestion to produce the results that I mentioned a few minutes ago. Yannick, the floor is yours for you to present your results.
Yeah, I want to ask the chair if I can use a few more minutes because we're a little bit late. There's a nodding. Okay. So So what I've been in charge of collecting data, and because we have the idea that we can understand a lot of the problems of fairness and diversity by looking at the data, and the obvious place to go would be to the streaming services. But I have to admit, I did not even ask if we could get data because I was pretty sure they would say no. So we worked in another way. We asked actually users to give us the data, to donate the data with the help of EU legislation, GDPR. Then you can actually ask for your own data. And then we also analyze 80 radio stations in Europe, and we made some interviews with users. And what we want to achieve is a fairness score, a little bit like the nutrition you have on your chocolate, your nutrition score, and a music data dashboard as mentioned. So here there's a QR code. If you want to see how our collecting system worked, what you can see from this Christmas tree is that it actually, when we tell people how to ask for their data to donate it to the research project, but when you ask, for instance, Spotify, they say it can take up to 30 days before you can get your own personal streaming history, and what you get is actually not what you have been exposed to. So we don't know how big the diversity of the exposure is, but you get your own listening history and the playlist that you make. The QR code will come later again. And you can see here Spotify, it takes up basically all of the streaming. We also had a little bit of Apple Music, and we are getting users from all over Europe. And we can analyze a lot of things in the data. In this case here, I will focus a little bit on the diversity in the radio and the streaming. And these are preliminary results. So now I invite you into the workshop of a data analyst. So this would be the classical way of looking at diversity: the gender of the artist, okay, and the regions from where the artists come. I don't think it's really surprising, these numbers, but we approach also diversity a little bit different to ask how much do people listen to the same song again and again and again, or how much do they listen to different songs? And if we take all our 160 donations, it looks like this. So if this is called the Gini, and it's originally how wealth is distributed in the world. So in this case, if it is 1, everybody would be listening to the same song all the time, the same song. And if it would be 0, it would be every time they would listen, it would be another song. Never listen to the same song twice. So you can see here, this is like a 0.5 with some fluctuations. Then if we look at the radio here, the case of Denmark, we can see that the pop music ones, like that, there's the red one here, the orange ones, they are actually much less diverse. They have a much bigger tendency to play the same song. And the lowest one, that is actually the classical radio. And here we have the problem of data cleaning and analysis, because actually in classical music it's difficult with metadata, because you can have the same composition, maybe even same recording, that has a different identifier and is not treated as a difference. So maybe there's a lot of Mozart in this here. And then you have something in the middle that looks like heartbeats, and that is interesting. It happens at the end of the year, and it is on the mainstream radio. And guess what? Maybe it's Christmas songs, but in order to work with this, you need actually to go a little bit deeper into the data and see what it is behind the peaks. There's next slide. So we actually did that for all the different countries. But you can see there's a lot of understanding what the peaks are. A funny fact is that the male tend to have of the listeners that donated their music have a little bit slightly more diverse listening. The women tend more to listen to the same song again and again and again among our users. But my final comment, quote, attributed to Albert Einstein, that not everything that can be counted counts, and not everything that counts can be counted. And that's the problem we are facing with the fairness score, putting fairness to a formula. But this is an ongoing process, and some of you have already been involved in that. So this was the presentation. Here again, you have the QR code. If you want to donate your data, you have still a chance. And otherwise, I will say thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Yannick. Thank you, Giuseppe.
Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you both for a wonderful presentation. You're still online? You're still there? Okay. So we are opening a very short period of questions and answers, 5 minutes. So if there's anyone who wants to make a question, to ask a question to either Giuseppe or Yannick, please do it, and I'll be around with the micro. Okay? No questions whatsoever. So if there are no questions, sorry,
I can add that we are publishing from now on and until Christmas. We're publishing a lot of different things on the website, so you can follow that here.
Okay, so thank you very much once again for a wonderful presentation, and we will have a 5-minute break. And during that 5 minutes, we have a special presentation prepared by George Cremona from the University of Malta, for those of you online. So please stay tuned and don't take too long. And if you're here on site, please don't take too long as well. So we will see you back in 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye. Thank you.
I got a secret you should know. Come a little close, I'll whisper slow. I got a secret you should know. People say don't be so loud. Watch the words coming out your mouth. Hands crossed, don't dare stand down. Follow the crowd, follow the crowd. Pull up, make them all bow down. Shut up, I'ma be real loud. Get up, I don't back down. Follow me now, follow me now. Only lovers, no enemies. Feel around me, clean energy. In my power, higher me. Here's the secret, melody. Why should we let other people decide when we could be having the time of our lives? Lay down your walls, come and dance to my vibe. I do it all the time, yeah, I do it all the time. Serving. Do, re, mi, fa, sa, sa, serving. Do, re, mi, fa, sa, sa, serving. That's it, no to the opposite. That's it. Give up, this girl don't quit. Follow me now. Oh, secret you should know. Come a little close, I whisper slow. I got a secret you should know.
Mesdames et messieurs, ladies and gentlemen, welcome again to the second day of the Eurovision's International Conference. And we are extremely happy to have this special roundtable on fairness in the Eurovision Song Contest in particular, with three extraordinary guests that I would like to welcome. First, the great Swiss performer of 1998, Gunvor Meyer, who will tell about her Eurovision journey. I'm also happy to have Alessandro Capicchioni, the, let's say, captain of the San Marino ship in the Eurovision troubled waters. And DJ Alan Tubery from Australia, who has been a big Eurovision fan and follower for many, many years. So we yesterday discussed that the concept of fairness is somehow difficult to grab. So before we start talking about fairness in Eurovision, I think we should just make a point on what fairness is for you actually in Eurovision. So last night we had the first semi-final, seeing some countries qualify. Congratulations. And some people might have said, this is fair, this is unfair. What was the last time when you felt this is fair or this is unfair in Eurovision, Gunvor?
Well, I think now it's always a political thing about Israel, and it was always in my year, 1998, we had this Jewish goal that was found at UBS, and so that was a huge problem, and I think it's not really fair because it's a song contest and that's a political thing.
Okay, so the politicization of Eurovision is an unfair thing. What is your last fairness or unfairness experience in Eurovision, Alessandro?
Half an hour ago. No, I'm joking, of course. Yeah, Eurovision is a very complex thing. It has many different aspects, so it is natural that somewhere, somehow, sometime, there is a hint of unfairness in any possible aspect, from the contest to the participating countries, because it has to do with states, with flags, and so it is a political situation, although it is denied through the rules. So in our particular case, I would say the change of the voting system was quite unfair, the way we were treated by the EBU. It happened some years ago, but not recently, to say the truth, yes.
Okay, we will come back to that later. Alan, you have been DJ not only in Eurovision occasions, but on many Eurovision parties. What kind of fairness or unfairness experience did you make there?
Okay, it's a very interesting topic because what shall we call unfairness? I'm basically going to talk especially about the social media. But as every form of art, we expect a reaction, and if there is no reaction, I think the art is worthless. Also, as an artist, we basically invite people to follow us and seeking fame. And therefore, if there is some negative and unfairness reaction through the social media, we should be prepared to accept that.
Mm-hmm. This will be also a very interesting thing that we're going to investigate further. But now, first I would like to learn a little bit more about how you lived your Eurovision journey after 1998. I just saw this newspaper article saying this time Gunvor will get points for sure. So how does it feel to be connected to these 0 points after so many years?
Well, maybe it's a little picture of myself, but only a little one. I think, it's maybe the press who always want to say it all the time and to remember, and they will never forget, and people will never forget. That's the way it is, I mean.
Yeah, but I mean, the first, now you can look at it with a certain distance, it's long time gone, but right after the contest, who was there to support you?
Well, in fact, there were not a lot of people. It was my family, maybe 2-3 friends, and the management, and yeah, that was it.
So when you were thrown into this Eurovision circus, were you aware of what's going to happen?
No, because I was 23, very naive, and it was a big chance for me, but it was really a hard experience also.
Did you have some expectations? What expectations did you have in terms of how you're going to be treated in Eurovision?
No, I did not have had. I just wanted to do my very best on stage, and I think I did. But no, I had no expectations.
What what environment would you have wished at that time? Would you have, did you want some more support from television? Did you feel alone? Or is it something that an artist has to go through?
I had a lot of support from the TV, and yeah, the press was negative, but I think I had a good support. I mean, I came back to Switzerland. I had so many gigs afterwards, 4 or 5 weeks, and that was really great.
So, in fact, that these 0 points that you got, do you think it was more a gift for your career?
I think so, because I think I would not sit here.
You had lots of successes before, also as a tap dancer. You had also some different career plans, maybe. In what way Eurovision affected these plans, and what could you make true in terms of a musical career after that?
I think I owe my whole career at the Eurovision Song Contest. It was such a great experience. If you have 80 million who are looking your song that you wrote for 23 years. And for me, it was everything, and it's still everything. And if I would have the chance to to go on stage next Saturday, I would do it.
You participated a second time in the Swiss national final as a composer.
As a composer.
As a composer. How does Swiss television approach former Eurovision contestants? Do they to be part of their long-term Eurovision strategy?
I'm not sure. I had a Swiss singer who was working for Blick, and he wanted to sing my song, but I don't know why they did not take it, because it was a funny song and a great song, and he did it very good.
Mm. There is a whole book about people who got 0 points in Eurovision. So this raises also the question, because of course everybody wants to give the utmost of his or her talent on the Eurovision stage, and then you end up with nothing. So is there a kind of fairness in getting this results? Can you get 0 points in a fair way?
A difficult question, I don't know. In my year, it was the first time that only the public voted. So I had no judges, and maybe I would get some points, but I would not sit here. So I'm glad that the judges didn't vote.
But this is an interesting point. So do you think that an expert jury is an element of fairness in Eurovision?
Yes, I think so, because they are really listening to the song, and it's not the show that counts, so it's the song, in fact, that counts. It's not the nation, or, yeah, it's really the song that you should listen to it and not to see what they do on stage.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, talking about nation, is it an advantage to perform for Switzerland?
Now, yes.
Yeah, when you see now the fuss that they're making about Nemo and the victory, and do you how does it feel? How does it feel? I mean, you have lived a very different journey in Eurovision, and then you see, oh yeah, he's everywhere. And do you feel some kind of jealousy?
Oh, no, not at all, because I heard the song for the first time and I knew it was the winner's song. And as I saw his performance on stage, it was, for me, wow, the greatest thing I have ever seen, with his range, high and down and everything, the rap and the parts of the song really amazing. So no, really not jealous.
Well, we had in the past a number of Eurovision singers that did not have a good experience with their participation, also because of the way media treated them, the way fans treated them. I'm thinking of the Israeli singer Eden Alen, who decided to stop her career because she couldn't face all this pressure anymore, and then she started working in a fast food service, and even there she was not left alone because people, of course, posted pictures of her working there. What is the way? What way can musicians protect themselves from having this negative impact?
Well, maybe not to read, but that's hard because it's quite impossible because someone comes and says, "Oh, have you seen?" and yeah, well, I think you have to try to defend a little bit and to not to get it too much to yourself. So just protect yourself.
Yeah, but this is particularly difficult. I mean, in your case, you were literally sharing a very personal story in your Eurovision song. So a composer that helped you, Egon Egemann, put this personal story into music and made your Eurovision song. Then you exposed with your personal experience, and people make out of it what they want. And in this unfortunate situation, something negative. You got some very harsh feedback also from the press. Fortunately, there was no social media at that time. Is it a strategy maybe not to share so much?
No, I would do it because I think if you perform something, you have to feel it, and that was always my opinion. Yeah.
So nowadays we have Eurovision here in Basel, and yesterday Gunvor performed at the Euro Club. So a big thank you for being here with the very short night.
Yeah, thank you for being here.
Is it something? Is it a kind of satisfaction now that after so many years, now you have the chance to show again all your talent?
Yes, it was really a very great experience. It was quite full, and I did a medley from 2025 now. I did 10 songs from this year, and that was very funny here. It was really great.
Compared 1998 to 2025, how do you feel this development of Eurovision? Are you still tempted to be part of it, or do you think it's developing in a way that is maybe too far away from me as an artist?
No, it's really great now. If you see the performance and the staging, the lights and everything, it's such a huge event. I mean, yeah, it's the biggest event, and it's a great event still.
Okay, so Swiss television, next time, you know what to do. San Marino Television also knows what to do. For many, many years, you have been accompanying the San Marino's participation since 2008. Were you, from the beginning, were you aware that San Marino as a microstate might have a difficult position in this Eurovision circus?
It was quite clear since the first year, so yes, I have to say that.
How did you feel that? How did they express that, maybe?
Well, it's not a clear expression, but it is not a secret that there are different sizes in Europe when it's up to countries, and that there are some countries that have more population, they have more money, so they have a sort of cultural influence compared to the smaller ones. So it's something natural that you feel over the skin. It's not, of course, anything official. It's part of the game, I think. It's part of the things. It's probably not fair, but what can you do regarding this?
So how do you tackle this challenge? I mean, you have big countries that can afford lots of pyro and huge props.
Yeah, that's something different. We're not talking about this. We're talking about a slight difference of treatment. But this is mainly from the past, I have to say. I have noted that recently the production team that helps you creating your staging has become very equal and listens to anybody with the same ear and helps as much as you need independently from who you are. I think this change happened like 4 or 5 years ago, 6 years ago. I could not say precisely, but this is an impression that I had. Although we are San Marino, any request is listened, answered very precisely, independently from the artists that we have. Either we have Gabri Ponte or Megara or Piquet-Jacks, which are 3 different type of artists that we brought. The star, the Eurovision group with very clear ideas but no cultural power, and the newcomers with a smaller staging idea and an unknown origin. But we were treated equally. So I can say it has been changed it has been migliorato.
Better way.
Yes, in a better way. Thank you. It's nice to be in Switzerland. Many people speak Italian.
Perfect. Yeah. Was there a kind of turning point, some event? I mean, those dealing with the Eurovision know that San Marino protested on several occasions against unfair treatment. Do you feel that these protests helped to improve things, or was that some decision from outside?
I cannot say that. I really don't know whether this information campaign that we've been keeping doing for years, in the 10th years, had sorted any kind of improvement of the situation. But as a matter of fact, it did change. Maybe, I don't know, simply because the production team hired people who said we need all countries to be the same from our point of view, because it will be the people and the juries judge them, not us giving them more or less according to what we think it is good or less good. This has been the change, I think, in the back office of the Eurovision, but I cannot say who pressed this change, if we did it with other countries, the small countries, or they simply changed internally. I could not say that. Mm-hmm. Maybe you should ask the Italian head of delegation.
Okay, okay. This will be for the next conference. However, when you're talking about the smaller states, is there kind of separate group of small Eurovision states that mingle together to improve their situation within?
We talk, because it is clear that smaller states have more difficulties in Eurovision due to the fact that they get less votes. Of course, they have less relationships with the others and so on. That is very clear. I have forwarded a proposal to the EBU some time ago that I think we will repolish this year, which is we take advantage from the fact that the big countries are in the final for no musical reason. They're there because they're big, they founded the Eurovision, and they fund the Eurovision more. And so I said, okay, let's have one small country into the final for no musical reason, just because they are smaller and they have more difficulties. We decide what is a small country, and every year one of them goes to the final. And we turn. It's the same method that you use with the Big Five. Nobody says anything.
So
this could be a solution to, in a way, balance the difference between the giant countries of Europe and the microstates.
So kind of small five?
Yes. I would start with small one. The smaller one this year is Cyprus is not a small country, but to make an example.
Coming from Germany, we always have these discussions of, yeah, we should do a national final comparable to Sweden and have a Melody Festival and put it up. And I think this opportunity is long gone. San Marino tried this, and you are, for many years, you had this Una Voce per San Marino, now you have the San Marino Song Contest. So there's obviously a way to re-establish a contest, a festival tradition in European television. Is it easier for smaller states to be so courageous or temporary?
Well, basically the problem with smaller states is the funding, the budget. If you have the budget, then it's not a problem. As a characteristic, we are very small, and we don't have really, I'm not saying many singers, I'm saying singers that are ready for the Eurovision stage. We keep an eye on them, of course. We update our list of possible singers, but it's quite difficult that we have a singer every year. We had one good singer, and we brought her to Eurovision 4 times. And then we finished the list. This allows us to look out and look for international singers. They come to San Marino and are willing to take part for us.
So maybe.
It has always been like that. It has always been like that, because it's not a joke going on the Eurovision stage and sing in front of their audience, in front of 26 cameras, and we know all the rest. So this makes our national final necessarily international. And this also helps us to spread the name of the Republic. So it's a question of also of visibility of the country, which is one of the reasons we do Eurovision. And recently, with this setup of our national final, we also were able to be in the first pages of the Italian national newspapers and TV news, which is also very important for us, because the relation with Italy has not always been very nice and very easy, especially in the last 10 years. So we are rebuilding this relation as well. So we have this double function of diplomacy, of international relation, and creating also an image of the country, possibly.
So relation is a good keyword. Now to go over to Ellen. You need to build up a relation with your crowd when you are working on the turntables. How did this relation change over the past years, where you have been a DJ in the Euro Club? And
the major change as a DJ is these days we can use USB sticks. And we don't have to carry crates of records. And that makes a hell of a difference. Another change which makes it also easier for us with the USB stick, for example, when I was in Copenhagen in 2014, I think.
Yes.
I was playing at the Euro Club, and then suddenly I was told, "Oh, tonight you're not playing at the Euro Club. We're taking you to the top." And I said, "Why?" And there was actually in Copenhagen, Justin Timberlake was performing in the arena at that time, and Eurovision had organized a hall to organize the Eurovision instead. And Justin Timberlake was doing, the Euro Club was in the top club, nightclub in Copenhagen, and Justin Timberlake was doing his private party at the club. And they asked me to play there because, and I said, why? And the manager said, look, it's going to be a lot easier. I don't have to pick up one of our DJs, and I'm not going to have any problem with them choosing one. So that was also the fact that we have the music now on USB stick. The fact we have music on USB stick makes it a lot easier to travel and to play music.
In terms of your crowd that is enjoying your music, did you perceive there any changes, that they are now more critical towards what you as an artist, in fact, because you are creating a special set, special ambience with the music that you're picking? Have people become more critical?
Okay, that's an interesting question, because the fan have this. The majority of fans are okay, but you've got this small group of what I would call fanatic, and they've got the impression that they own the artist or the DJ, and they've got the right to tell us what to play or what to sing. And one of the struggle I have is you have a delegation organizing remixes of the song. But at the Euro Club, we're not allowed to play remixes, which is just completely crazy, because if you spend a lot of money for a delegation to play the song, and we cannot play it at Euro Club, where can we play it? That's the thing.
Is there any reason for this rule?
You've got the OGAE basically who is organizing the Euro Club. And there's a few people have complained they don't want remixes, they just want mainly the same song over and over again. And I'm not a jukebox, that's the other thing. You know, we should be able to bring an atmosphere when you play the thing. And that's one of the unfairness I found at the Euro Club.
Okay, and how about this play Yaya Ding Dong experience?
Oh, for example, the Yaya Ding Dong, we got a strict demand last year that we cannot play it. We have to play only 3 minutes. I got into trouble in Sweden because I played Waterloo in Swedish version at the Euro Club, where 2/3 of the people were Swedish. And some people at the head make this guideline, what we're allowed to play and not to play. I could understand last year we were not allowed to play any Israeli song because you know, they didn't want to create more problem we had already. But it was also, I didn't really agree with that, but I didn't play any of the Israeli song. Yeah.
I see. So we see that even in a context like the Euro Club with the DJs and the fan base, there are lots of rules, there are lots of things to follow. Foreign artists, how is this experience if you're in Eurovision and you are not allowed to do this and that? Or was it not that strict in '98?
No, I don't think so. If I remember Gildo Horn, who was climbing up and doing really like a clown something on stage. No, I don't think so. It's really an open stage for everyone, I think.
I think in the meantime, the German delegation would be fined if he did that. Can you tell us a little bit about the whole experience when you arrived there? How were your needs as an artist attended? How did the producers try to make your performance on stage a unique experience?
We were there 1 week before the 9th of May 1998, and we had every day the chance to be on stage, to perform, to make the lighting, the staging, and everything. And on the last day, there were the what we could wear, and we had a lot of time to perform and to knew the stage and where we will be. The camera is there, and in 1 minute 50 you have to look here and then here. It was really a great experience, and I was not afraid to go on stage, in fact.
Nowadays we have, thanks or due to social media, we have this experience that all the artists become friends and are having a good time and meeting each other at the various pre-parties, having streams together. How close is the relationship with the other contestants? I mean, it's still a contest. They are, they're competitors.
Yes, in a way, yes, but it was really very nice because, there are somehow friends and you help each other, or you see, as you said, in the clubs and you dance with them, and it's really a great time and no jealousy.
Mm-hmm. So in this context, you experienced any unfairness?
No, not at all, no.
No, so everybody is on the same level. Great. Talking about music, do you feel that the way Eurovision is dealing with musical styles is fair?
Yes, because I think it's for everyone. Really, you have from rap to country pop to pop, or even the funky music. It's really open for everyone, and I think that's the great thing on the Eurovision Song Contest.
Okay, so I would give this question also to Alessandro. Talking about songwriting camps and pools of composers that are working for various nations, always the same ones, invited by TV stations. Is this not contradictory to the concept of fairness when you're inviting, because you're closing the competition to a broader number of composers and authors?
The fact is that things change, and Eurovision has been changing along the years. It has become something different compared to its early life, where the countries brought their culture. So you could hear Dutch, Italian, French, and all the Swedish and so on. Nowadays, most of the language is English, for example. What does this mean? That the countries are not so interested in bringing their culture anymore, because the Eurovision has changed and it has become more something related to the music industry, although the national broadcasters are, of course, involved and take part for the artists. So in that sense, I think that things go where it is needed, they go. So songwriting camps are very efficient because they give you most of the time a very good song, if not a winning song or a song that takes you to the final. And we have fewer composers because it's a sort of a selection, and you have those composers that are able to take you to a certain point, as we have a predominance of the Swedish culture, because their production is Swedish, all the technicians are Swedish, all the stagings are made, I mean in terms of EBU I'm saying. This is a Swedish group that goes in every country and helps the host broadcaster produce the show, because they are said to be the best, which they are probably. And we know Sweden is always in the final. We know a lot of Swedish composers are in every national final. We had one this year, and they were like competing in Malta and in Serbia and so on. So I think it is fair because it just is the reality nowadays. So it was French and Italian based in the 60s. It was English based in the 70s and 80s. And now it's Swedish based, so to speak. Okay, it's a phase, it's a historic phase that we live in. So yes, it is fair, in my opinion.
Okay. However, San Marino is going a different way with its national selection. So also reflecting maybe its roots as the oldest republic in the world, that you give the chance to everybody to submit a song and to compete in the eliminatory rounds. What is the idea behind that?
So we didn't deny our past, and we keep it open to all the world. And we say our final is composed by 20 artists. 10 come from a selection made out of all the applications that arrive from all over the world. And 10 are invited basically from the Italian music industry. So we mix our international story to Eurovision with our Italian, culturally speaking, roots. So with this mix, we made this mix, and what I heard this year is that the international part was more interesting, was more diverse, was richer in terms of proposal, while the Italian part was very Italian-oriented, in a way. And fortunately, we have Gabri Ponte, who is a star, so he deserved the victory, of course. But so we do this mix, yes. So in a way, we don't go towards that direction so clearly. I mean, the Swedish direction so clearly, like Cyprus does. Cyprus relies on the Swedish culture, and it's quite effective.
Well, not so much last night.
Oh, not last night, but it changed. In the last years, Cyprus did a great change.
But if we follow this concept, and I think it's a good idea, but however, there's still the question of fairness if you see newcomers compete against a big star like Gabri Ponte. That, of course, if I was a bookmaker, I would immediately put my money on his name.
Again, we have a fair jury. The first year we did Una Voce per San Marino, we had Achille Lauro, which was another great Italian star. And everybody said, Achille Lauro will surely win. He did, but he won by 1 point. And the runner-up was a newcomer from London, Aaron Sibling, which was very Eurovision sound. But for 1 point, he came second. And the third came third for 1 point. So it was not a very clear victory. And then we had, the next year we had Eiffel 65. They came sixth, and the Pickajacks won. From where? From nowhere. So now everybody can win. The third year we had Loredana Berthet, and she didn't win. So yes, it is a fair competition. This year Gabri Ponte won. Okay, okay, it's a good thing.
Okay, I can hand it over to Alan. So we were just talking about the impact of Swedish composers, about the variety of songs in Eurovision. You as a DJ, do you perceive this a real variety, or do you think there is still an aspect of the musical scene that is not sufficiently reflected in Eurovision?
No, I think the last few years we've seen so many different styles of music, which is very interesting. It has changed. I mean, if you look at the beginning, that was basically la chanson. And then I think the first time we had a major change was through France Gall, with Poupée de Cire, Poupée de Sang. And progressively we ended up having more and more inclusion in the style of music. So it is a good thing.
How do the fans accept the songs from the past?
It's interesting because you've got what I would call the people between 50 and death who enjoy hearing puppet on the strings, and then you've got the new crowd or the new fans who only knows about 5-6 years of the contest, and they're not receptive to this old song. So it is one of the issues from the Euroclub. When we have 2 rooms, it's very easy to cater for both sides. But if you've got only 1 room, it creates problems, and that's where the unfairness, because the majority are young people, and there's still a crowd of about maybe a quarter who are older people, and they would enjoy listening to these older songs, which the younger ones do not know. So if you tend to play the older songs, they complain against you.
People are not only complaining about you as a DJ, they're complaining on the internet a lot about individual singers, and not only complaining, attacking them in a very rude manner. The atmosphere in the fan bubble in some forums can be very toxic. What impact does this have on the whole fan community?
Yeah, the social media is a little bit of a poison present. You need
Cake, maybe.
poison. Yeah, you need them to create your profile. And as I was saying before, artists or DJ, we basically try to have fandoms. So we should be also open to negative comments and positive comments. However, the last few years, the comments are becoming more vitriolic, and it's absolutely, in my age, it's not a big issue because I don't have anything to prove anymore. But for the younger ones, it can destroy their self-confidence, and it is really, really a big problem. The other problem, of course, is for the artists, they need probably more support from the delegation, I would say. Gunvor was saying she was well supported after the Eurovision, but it seems these days that it's not anymore the case.
Can you give us some examples?
Okay, I'll take probably the best example I can think of now would be, what was her name? Chanel. She represented, she represented Spain. Now, when she won in Benidorm, she won by 4%, and the two favorite ones were second and third. So the fans really attacked her, absolutely terribly. Then she participated at Eurovision and finished third. So suddenly she's put on a pedestal, and you know that feeling, being put on a pedestal. And then later on, she was destroyed again. She could not perform a song because the choreographer had the rights on the choreography. So therefore, she was not allowed to do the choreography unless she would pay a very large amount of money. She was not even invited to Benidorm the following year to perform her new songs. So the artist needs to have a little bit more support. We had in Australia Montaigne, who was the first Australian not getting through the final. And she had to take all the social media out because the fan group of Australia were absolutely terrible. And SBS, the Australian TV, didn't really protect her. Basically, they walked away. And she really went into a lot of depression for that. Yeah.
Gunvor, hearing that, what would be your suggestion, or what solution do you suggest as an artist to protect young participants from this experience?
I don't know. It maybe to tell them my story, maybe, and to tell them that they have to know if they go out to go on such a huge stage that it could happen. And I don't know how to protect. I mean, social media is hard. The press is hard. It's a really hard stuff. In fact,
if there was anything you could change in this world of in these dynamics between musicians, fans, television, what would you like to be different?
Well, it was a hard way, but I would not change anything.
Oh, so you like to go it the tough way?
Yeah, in fact, yes, it's the way you have to go, I think, because I learned a lot. I mean, I was really under the earth, and I came back as Phoenix. Yeah, somehow.
So San Marino's also had some very painful experiences with not qualifying for many years, with the situation that you were not even allowed to put up your own televoting because of that. So what did this make in the feeling of your delegation, in your enthusiasm for the contest?
Well, yes, if you refer to a precise situation, yes, it is probably not a secret that San Marino has not enough numbers to have a televote, because it can be, statistically speaking, not representative. You may have a couple of families deciding the votes. And so we have we never had televote, and we only have the jury vote. I don't remember how many years ago, in 2018 or 17, there's been a voting reform by the EBU, which they said, okay, we split the jury vote and the televote, and I think it was a quite good reform. But when they come up to San Marino, they said, okay, this reforms works for every country, but not for San Marino. What can we do? Okay, we create a backup situation, and we say San Marino televoting will be substituted by a bunch of countries that we decide, and that we create the San Marino televote. This system will also be the backup system for those countries which, in case of failure of the televoting system, don't have a televote, and so this will be the substitution of the televote. So they basically said San Marino will have the backup system as a main system. It might have been a very good way to go with the reform, because they said that we want San Marino in the family. We don't exclude San Marino from the competition because of its population limits. But unfortunately, we have to make it different for San Marino. So I say this is a very nice way of thinking of setting the thing. But they didn't communicate with us. They simply went out with the news, and we were like, oh, thank you. We went out with a press release. Our Director General at the time was quite angry, quite disappointed, not angry. And we opened a table, and there was a lot of, how do you say, openness from the EBU, and they said, we are ready to listen to any proposal. We will be thinking of a possible alternative for your situation. So it was, in a way, they understood our position. And precisely, I went to Yanola San, that was the executive producer at the time, and I made him a question and said, what if, let's put an extreme case, which would never exist or whatever. Let's put the case where in Germany only Turkish people vote, or the majority of the televoting is made up by Turkish people. It was, of course, an invented example. And you put the rule that only originals from the country can vote, and Germany would have not been televoting. Would you tell Germany before the news is out? And said, yes, you're right. And that was what we needed to know. So we think that the behavior of the EBU in that case was not fair. We were also not protected by Italy, which was aware, of course, of the change that was up to come, and they didn't communicate with us. And but then it all resolved in the best way. I mean, it's just a case, a point in the history. And they didn't think of us because they had. I mean, that was what I was saying. Well, small countries count less in that sense.
Okay, so wouldn't it be more helpful not to have a place in the final for the small countries, but a voice in the reference group?
That is another point, because in the reference group there is one country that had to represent the big countries, the big five, even though no head of delegation from the big five is elected. And for the same reason, there should be a head of delegation for the small countries. For the same reason. We proposed it. Let's see.
Then I will ask this question also to Alan from this point of view of the fan community. Do you feel that, or do you wish that if a fairy came and said, oh, you can change something within the fan community, what would you change?
Oh, I don't believe in fairies. That's a problem. I don't know. it's a general problem. It's not just a problem with Eurovision. It's with sport. It's just a generation problem, and it's very. The only advice I can say is if you're an artist and try to protect yourself and not read the social media before performing. And actually, I know, for example, the French delegation decided to block everything for Loan. They don't even know the ratings or anything because it's taking a lot of pressure away for them. So it's a very good way to cope with the negativity of the social media. But unfortunately, you do need the social media these days. It's a very... Another issue, of course, these days, you've got the influencer, the pseudo, what they call themselves, influencer. It's not so important in Eurovision, but when you look at politics now, we just had the election in Australia, and 20% of the votes came from influencer, the media, and they're not journalists. You know, it's about them being seen with politicians. And that's unfortunately a big worry about the way the world is going, but we don't have much opportunity to change this. So we have to go along and try to cope with the best way to do. But you cannot change the toxicity. It's happening. You cannot change the unfairness of the remarks and everything. So just have to learn to protect you. I think that's the best way.
Okay, thank you for these last words to wrap up this panel. In fact, I think we can summarize the idea of fairness in this case to transparency in your case, to empathy for the artists, and to to brains for the rest of the world. So I open the roundtable for questions in the room.
So thank you very much to the three of you for a wonderful roundtable. Thank you, Vivian, as well. And now we have a period of questions. So please, if you want to ask any question to our speakers, I'll be around with the microphone. No questions.
Hello, thank you for your for sharing your experience. My question deals with fairness.
No, it's
okay. Well, okay. My question deals with fairness regarding the political aspects of Eurovision and the political interferences with your professional activity as media specialists or artists. So you, as artists or media professionals, do you feel the pressure of the political aspects of Eurovision in your day-to-day activity? Does this aspect of Eurovision affect your day-to-day activity as professionals, or is it totally exterior? I don't know if my question is clear enough. But,
is the question two?
I had an experience in 1998, and that was the Israel winning, and we had in Switzerland this Jewish gold, as I told you. I think it's a real political thing as well. And not always the best thing, because it's a competition.
Mm-hmm. So can you maybe explain a little bit more about the people from Switzerland, what happened there?
Mm-hmm. They found out that the UBS was holding back the money of Jewish people, and that was in 1998, and Viva la Diva, she won the contest. Mm-hmm. For Israel.
Okay. So, Alessandro.
When the international situation gets tensed, this tension reflects on Eurovision, and on the contrary, when the political situation is quieter and smoother, that is reflected in the Eurovision field as well. That is very clear, although the EBU tries to keep the Eurovision contest and apolitical events with all means. Regarding the contest, I don't want to be misunderstood. I think the EBU is doing a great job, absolutely. They sometimes make a mistake. I mean, they try to do the best thing always. It does not always happen because they're human and humans make mistakes. When it's up to political stuff in Eurovision, I do think that countries in war should not take part in Eurovision because it does change the stability of the voting, does change the fairness of the voting. Azerbaijan and Armenia gave null points every year to each other. That is not fair. Everybody knows it, and I think EBU should have taken action against it. And Ukraine and Russia are at war. They should not take part in Eurovision. Israel is at war, should not take part in Eurovision, and all the situation that can interfere with a fair competition. That is my opinion.
Okay, so in my profession, politics doesn't really play a big role. However, I would like to mention something. Politics have always been with Eurovision since 1956. The first time Eurovision happened, there was already politics. There were 7 countries participating. And some of the songs, for example, from the Netherlands, was a song called The Little Bird Singing. In reality, it was a song about Anne Frank looking through the window at the little birds. You had Germany, who had 2 artists, and one of them was a new poster boy. His name was Schwarz, and he was actually Jewish. And his father had been in the concentration camp. So Germany sent this artist to try to get some of rehabilitation. And the song was When the Trains Come Back, which means basically when the prisoners were coming back to the train station. So politics have always been there, disguised or more openly, but Eurovision, you cannot separate politics to the contest.
Thank you very much. Are there any more questions? At least one?
My question is mainly for Alessandro. What do you think of the new method of announcing the finalists?
I think we should get the mic back. It's more comfortable for our guests.
Yeah.
I think it's not much. I think it is better, it is nicer. It is good that sometimes you change something in the format, because otherwise it's always the same, so people got more interested in the viewer. And it is improving, even because you have the same country, you can have it more times, like it happened to us. And when I was in the green room, when I saw the camera standing, not going away, I thought, oh, we're gonna be in the screen again, and I don't think the others will kick us off twice. So it gave us good news in a way. So I think it's better, definitely.
Okay, any other questions from the audience? Yeah?
I have a question for the DJ. I heard you cannot play remixes, you cannot play music from Israel. That is also at this moment.
Sorry?
That is also at this moment happening.
Yes.
That's the actual thing. Why does DJs accept that?
Well, I don't. This is exactly. I don't, and this is why I'm not playing at the Euro Club this year. Yeah, because I find I find it's a kind of censorship. And as I said before, as a DJ, we're not just a jukebox. And we should not just play the same 20 songs.
But the other does.
But the other does, yes. Yeah, that's the issue, and that's why I'm not so popular this year.
Okay, so we see that the topic of fairness is something that we can discuss for hours and hours. And in this particular context, of course, it also has to do with politics. But I think if we're talking about politics, to keep it fair, we should also try not to find one part as the bad part, but see the various aspects of the thing. And this is also the approach that we as scientists needs to take and want to take. So I wish you all a very thoughtful and mindful coffee break. But before that, we will have a special surprise for you, because of course, if we have a wonderful singer like Gunvor being here in the panel, we want to hear her, and she will give a little concert, a special concert for us. So wait 2 minutes until we have changed for the technical things that we need, and then we will hear a surprise. Thank you. Vielen Dank. Of the Eurovision's International Conference, we are deeply proud to have the wonderful Gunvor.
Cocktails serviert jeden Abend, verzaubert jede Frau, spielt mit seinem Charme. Auch du ließt dich von ihm blenden, warst schon nach paar Stunden in seinem Arm. Lass ihn an dich gehen, wie oft ist er nicht still. Es war nur ein Schein, lass ihn endlich sein. Wie oft betrog er dich, dachtest er ändert sich. Doch dabei liebst du dich, sagt es nicht weh. Samstag freust dich auf den Abend, hast noch viel zu tun bis zum Feierabend. Aber die Gedanken schwafeln rüber. Denkst du noch an ihn, schmeißt die Arbeit sogar die Stelle hin. Lass ihn an dich gehen, wie oft ist er nicht still. Es war nur ein Schein, lass ihn endlich sein. Wie oft betrog er dich, dachtest er ändert sich. Doch dabei liebst du dich, sagt uns nicht weh. Lass ihn an dich gehen, wie oft ist er nicht still. Es war nur ein Schein, lass ihn an dich sein. Wie oft betrug er dich, dachtest er ändert sich. Doch wenn du liebst du dich, sagt uns nicht weh, sagt uns nicht weh, es tut so weh.
Vielen Dank. Thank you so much. Thank you. And as it is a special year now, this year, because Eurovision Song Contest, because of Nemo, is here in Switzerland, I wanted to do a medley, and I'm wondering if you're gonna sing with me, maybe. You know some songs, I'm sure. So, please, let's start.
Welcome to the show, let everybody know I'm done playing the game, I break out up the chains. You better buckle up, I pour another cup. This is my Bohème, so drink it up, my friend. Ooh, ooh, the story is my truth. I went to hell and back to find myself on track. I broke the code, whoa, like Ammonites. I just give it some time. Now I found paradise. I broke the code, whoa. She go low, she go low, she goes so low, she goes so low, she go low, she go low. She got me dirty dancing, dirty dancing. Dirty dancing. walking in a rubble, walking over glass. Neighbors say we're trouble. Well, that time has passed. Peering from the mirror, no, that isn't me. A stranger getting nearer. Who can this person be? You wouldn't know me at all today. From the fading light I fly, rise like a phoenix out of the ashes, seeking radiant inventions. Retribution you were warned. Once I'm transformed, once I'm reborn, you know I will rise like a phoenix, but you were my flame. Tonight eternity's an open door. No, don't ever stop doing the things you do. Don't go. In every breath I take, I'm breathing you. Euphoria, forever to the end of time. From now on, only you and we're going up, euphoria, an everlasting peace of heart, a beating that within my heart. We're going up. I've been trying to let you go, but I thought I was strong. But your love's got a hold on me, and now I can't move on. Are we making the same mistakes? Are we learn from the past? Could this be a second chance, the one who's gonna last? On top of the world I'm reaching out. On top of the world I sing out loud. Just promise you'll never break my heart. I give you forever. On top of the world just you and I. So promise you'll never say goodbye. Now I know we are forevermore. Keep trying on, keep holding on. There's a place we belong, where life is good, where love is strong. I'm never gonna leave you to cry on your own. I'm never ever gonna not go and pick up the phone. I'm never ever gonna let you to chill to the bone. No, no, never. No, no, never. I'm never ever gonna leave you to cry on your own. I'm never ever gonna let not to pick on the phone. I'm never ever gonna let to be chill to the bone. No, no, never. No, no, never. Viva la diva, viva Vittoria, Afrodita. Viva la diva, viva Vittoria, Cleopatra. Vous qui cherchez l'étoile, vous qui vivez un rêve, vous, héros de l'espace, au cœur plus grand que la terre. Vous, donnez-moi ma chance, emmenez-moi loin d'ici. Ne partez pas sans moi, laissez-moi vous suivre. Vous qui volez d'autres villes, laissez-moi suivre. La plus belle aventure, le plus beau voyage, tu mènes un jour sur ces soleils, sur des planètes d'amour. Wie eine Blume am Winterbeginn und so wie ein Feuer im eisigen Wind, wie eine Puppe, die keiner mehr mag, fühl ich mich an manchem Tag. Dann seh ich die Wolken, die über uns sind und höre die Vögel, die Schreie im Wind. Ich sing aus Angst vor dem Dunkeln mein Lied und hoffe, dass nichts geschieht. Ein bisschen Frieden, ein bisschen Träumen und dass die Menschen nicht so oft weinen. Ein bisschen Frieden, ein bisschen Liebe, dass ich die Hoffnung nie mehr verliere. Sing mit mir ein kleines Lied, dass die Welt in Frieden lebt. Hai sbagliato io, hai sbagliato tu, non riparliamo né più. Io senza te cosa farei? Io non respiro se tu non ci sei. Io senza te cosa farei? Una farfalla che non vola più. Napoleon is surrender. Oh yeah, I have met my destiny quite a similar way. This group on the shelf is always repeating itself. Waterloo, I was defeated, you won a war. Waterloo, promise you'd leave me forevermore. Waterloo, couldn't escape if I wanted to. Waterloo, knowing the fate is to be with you. Thank you so much. Vielen Dank. Merci. Thank you. Danke. Thanks, Roland, my husband. Thank you. Shallow. Do you want one more? Or yeah. Okay, it's not a Eurovision song, but I love it, and it's also beautiful with the cello. Something, boy, Are you happy in this modern world, or do you need more? Are you searching what you're searching for? I'm falling. In all the good times I found myself longing for change, and in the bad times I feel myself. Tell me something, boy. Are you happy in this modern world, or do you need more? Are you searching what you're searching for? I'm falling. In all the good times I find myself longing for change, and in the bad times I fear myself. All of the deep end watches I dive in, I never meet the ground. Crash to the surface where they can hurt us. We're far from the shallow now. In the shallow, in the shallow, in the shallow, we're far from the shallow now. Oh, 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 oh. Shallow, in the shallow, in the shallow, we're far from the shallow now.
Thank you so much, Roland on the cello. Thank you so much. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name's Dr. Jack Shepherd. I'm a lecturer in tourism studies at Mid-Sweden University, and I'll be coming to the Eurovisions conference in Basel this year, where I look forward to meeting as many of you as possible there. So I'm originally from the UK. I moved to Sweden in 2015 to switch from studying history and French to studying tourism studies. I finished my PhD 3 years ago, where I was looking at the relationship between tourism and peace building in Israel-Palestine. And as part of that work, I conducted a large study on the 2019 Eurovision Song Contest in Tel Aviv, looking at why Eurovision fans chose not to boycott the event and to travel to Israel. And as part of that, I was conducting data collection in Tel Aviv, which is where this picture was taken. And I think it was really at this point that my love for Eurovision blossomed from kind of a personal interest to a research interest. I had such great time meeting all the fans in Tel Aviv, and honestly, I was quite overwhelmed by the response to the survey that I put on EurovisionWorld.com, which got over 2,000 responses. So I really want to thank anyone who took part in that who might be watching this. Since then, Eurovision has continued to be a research interest of mine. So together with an Australian colleague who also loves the event, we are releasing a book on Eurovision and its relationships to events, leisure and tourism studies. We have several of the contributors in that book here at the conference, and I myself have written on topics such as Eurovision's relationship to war, the experiences of host cities, for example, Malmö last year, and tourism development in the Icelandic town of Húsavík in the shadow of the Fire Saga movie, which I'm very pleased to see has got new life with both the Icelandic and the British entries to Eurovision visiting Húsavík this year. So if I crack on, my work on war is really what led me to this presentation today. War has always been a part of Eurovision. So when the contest began in 1956, France was deeply embroiled in a war in Algeria. And since we have seen not only colonial wars and wars as part of the so-called war on terror outside Europe, we've also seen conflict in Europe in Yugoslavia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, or Northern Ireland and Ukraine. And what I discovered when I was working and looking into this relationship was that war did not really affect the contest greatly until about 2022. So if you look at voting patterns, one cannot really see any correlation between being at war and not doing well at the contest. In fact, several countries reached the top 3 in the contest despite fighting gruesome wars. So we might look at Russia and Chechnya in 2000, or Israel and Lebanon in 1982. Although we do start to see some evidence of war interfering in the contest during the Yugoslav wars, there is a significant change in 2022. And I think that these two cases are quite interesting to look at. We have, on the one hand, Bosnia's 1993 entry with Fazla, who, despite escaping Sarajevo and the siege there, basically on bare foot to make it to the Eurovision and sing a very moving song about the war, they only came 16th. Whereas if you think of Kalush Orchestra in 2022, a slightly similar story, also singing a song about the war, they were sailed to first place. So we're seeing that war is increasingly having a noticeable impact on the contest. And I would argue that the increasing presence of war in the contest is a threat to its longevity. This threat is not militaristic, although we have seen the Eurovision arena be threatened by military actors, both in Tel Aviv in 2019 and in Turin in 2022. Instead, I would argue that the threat stems more from the contest's seeming inability to adequately address a paradox that has long been present and highlighted, but which becomes all the more obvious during times of war. This paradox is the idea that the Eurovision Song Contest claims to believe in universality, while simultaneously it claims to celebrate liberal values such as equality and inclusivity, values that are intimately tied to the brand culture co-created between the contest's organizers and its fan base. Participating countries that are at war highlight this paradox and create difficult situations for the contest to manage, placing the contest in a bind between sticking to its admissions policy or excluding warring countries on the basis that they do not represent the contest's values. So maybe we should look a little bit further at this difference between the universalism and liberalism that we find in the event. So on the one hand, the Eurovision Song Contest is certainly a universal event. It's an event of broadcasters, not of nations. In order to therefore participate, a country does not necessarily need to approve, but rather its broadcaster seeks to have membership in the European Broadcast Union. To be a member of the EBU, you need to be a member of the International Telecommunications Union and be located in the European Broadcasting Area. So in other words, there's not really any litmus test of values in order to be in the Eurovision Song Contest. Now, if the EBU had used its own values of universality, independence, excellence, diversity, accountability, and innovation onto the Eurovision Song Contest, perhaps I would not have to be making this presentation. The issue has arisen because the Eurovision Song Contest has different stated values to its parent organization, including the values of equality and inclusivity. Now, the Eurovision Song Contest's association with liberal values is partly due to its association with the European political project and due to the pressure that mega events are facing to appear to care for issues like human rights.
Hi everyone, my name is Dr. Barbara Barreiro Leon, and I'm a lecturer in film, visual culture, Spanish and Latin American studies at the University of Aberdeen, where I specialized in Eurovision studies. Today I'm going to be talking about fairness in Eurovision from a specific case of study, and this is the case of Chanel, who represented Spain in 2022. The title of this presentation is Cultural Representation and Fairness in Eurovision, the case of Chanel, Spain 2022. So what is fairness in Eurovision? There's been a lot of research from my side in terms of finding the perfect fairness in Eurovision, and also how this topic is or is not part of the academic discussion in the Eurovision studies. And I have to say that things like voting patterns and how this is distributed is part of this discussion and debate, ongoing debate in Eurovision. However, the term fairness as such has not been discussed in the song contest. However, there is research on fairness in other type of contests that you can find in the bibliography here. They're not television contests. They're not the contests that we know and we love. However, there are some part of the theory that I think we can apply to the Eurovision studies approach, and I have some here, some of the quotes from the bibliography. One says, fairness is not only a common concern from participants and volunteers, but it's also an important consideration from program planners and evaluators as well. And that means that fans are concerned about fairness. We as scholars are concerned about fairness. But in this case, the participants, volunteers, and also the program planners, in this case would be the EBU, is also concerned about how fair is a contest and how we can make a fairer contest in that regard. There's this also another quote that I like. A proactive approach to contest planning should include an analysis plan with objective measures of fairness. That means that this should be stipulated before the contest begins, how to be more fair in that regard. And I have this image here of Eurovision finale and split screen 2023, where Finland and Sweden, one of them was about to win Eurovision. And there was a lot of discussion from fans, like, it's not fair that the public vote, even though Finland in this case won so many votes, but then Sweden got votes from the jurors, and how we are not respecting, or the EBU, or however the contest is organized, is not respecting the people's voice. And I want to focus on that, not on this specific case, but how the public votes and the public voice is a matter of concern in Eurovision and for Eurofans. I'm not going to say this is more fair and this should be done in another way, because I think the way that this is presented, it should be half and half. So I'm going to be focusing on the case of Chanel. This was actually the first Benidorm Fest that happened. This was the first year. And there was a lot of controversy, again, because of jury vote and the public opinion on the public vote. So Chanel won because of the jury vote. In the finale of the Benidorm Fest, Tanxungueiras was actually the band or group that was chosen by the public to go to Eurovision. It was a very regional music. They even sung in a language different from Spanish. It's Galician. It was folk, so included a lot of different things about Spanish identity and Spanish culture. But again, it's enclosed in a very community, very regional community, I would say, which is Galicia. So the public in Spain voted for Tanxungueiras. So that was the choice that they made. However, because of the jury vote, which was actually back then, the 60% of the final decision. So it was that decision that took Chanel to Turin to take part in the competition in Eurovision. And the public was not happy in Spain around that time. So they started to throw so many things at Chanel, at the jurors, at the organization, because 60% of the votes, or 60% of overall the amount of votes, is not fair for some jurors to take charge on that. And I want to refer back to the bibliography and say this quote out loud. Including a jury helps mitigate potential biases arising from public voting alone. So that means that we have to be fair. So we need to take into account all these different biases that the public might have, such as regional or political favoritism. It adds a layer of objectivity and expertise to the voting process. So the jury is there to be objective. However, the problem here was that 60% was a lot. And in that case, also, there was public outrage. Like, this was a big thing in Spain. Many felt that the jury system ignored Spain's cultural diversity by not sending a Galician folk band, because there was a lot of support for Tanxungueiras, who represented not just Galicia, but they represented the diversity that we have in Spain. There was a lot of accusations of unfairness, and that's why I wanted to bring this topic here. And that is because critics argued that the jury's decision reflected a bias against Spain's regional cultures as well. And then
Hello, Eurovision's Conference. This is Leeds calling. I'm Dr. Sam Murray. I'm a lecturer in music management for the University of Leeds.
And I'm Jenna Doyle, senior lecturer in music at Middlesex University, London.
What we're going to be sharing with you today is an overview of our research into songwriters' perspectives of Eurovision. So let's take a dive in. We're going to start off by talking about the methodology of our project. So this project kind of emerged from wanting to understand, how does a songwriter actually experience the contest? We very much felt that ethnography was a really great way to do that, particularly to try and understand the lived element of that experience. We also, as part of this process, were drawing on our own professional experiences. And Jenna, you've got a background, haven't you, within songwriting?
Yes, so I have like a dual career. So I'm an academic, but I'm also a commercial songwriter in the US, Asia, Europe, America, all across the world, really.
And I'm the other side of the team, being an absolute diehard Eurovision fan who's been to about 6 or 7 contests now. So it seems like, you know, when Jenna and I had a cup of tea at a staff event, as we used to be colleagues at the same institution, we thought this would be a really good fit for a research team, a professional songwriter and a Eurovision fan. Let's see what we could come up with. So we're going to share findings with you today for a pilot study we did, where we interviewed 5 different Eurovision songwriters. And then we also cross-referenced the things that we found with fan media talking about songwriters, because quite interestingly, there is not that much mainstream media coverage of Eurovision songwriters, unless they're a performing artist or unless they've done something of perceived significance by the mainstream media.
So we first of all looked at Eurovision as an inspiring platform and talked to our interviewees about this. And it emerged that a lot of songwriters are, you know, tackling the unique challenge of Eurovision for both commercial and personal reasons as well. And they see it as something that's truly different and a very different kind of challenge as a writer. We also have the idea of the kind of constraints or rules of the contest, you know, kind of 3 minutes, certain requirements of the song, to set that creative challenge and responding to the identities of each country, for example. That's a very exciting challenge for them. We looked into some of the kind of key songwriting camps for Eurovision and kind of gained some really great insights into camps from the Woods in Norway, for example, who have had multiple entries over the years and for the national selection as well. So songwriting camps as a way into Eurovision was definitely a theme that we explored with our interviewees, for sure.
So we're just going to take a look at what participants have said about why they want to get actually involved in Eurovision and what's kind of inspired them. One of our songwriters who was based in the UK was really inspired by Sam Ryder's performance and the fact that Eurovision was in Liverpool back in 2023. And this had really changed the perception of the contest for songwriters in the UK and wanting to be involved. Another kind of reflected a common sentiment amongst many of our participants, which was that the contest itself will always attract writers because it is such a unique challenge that you can't really get anywhere else in the world. And then finally, one of the interesting interview quotes we got from our participants was talking about the actual contest process itself, saying that knowing so many people have voted for your song and that you have made your country proud, well, that's really an indescribable feeling. So being able to represent your country as a songwriter and have that lead a country to some kind of success can have such a positive impact on the experience for songwriters.
So moving on to the commercial songwriting process, we split this into kind of two parts, if you like. So first of all, you have the pathway to camp participation. So at the top, we have writers or aspiring writers. This could also be writers who've previously written for Eurovision coming back to the process. Sometimes these writers have a publishing deal and the fees for the camp can be paid for by the publisher and recouped through royalties that the songwriters receive via them. Or sometimes these songwriters are self-published, self-funded, they pay for it themselves, find a key contact or apply to the camp and are deemed worthy to attend. So both these individuals reach out either personally or through their publisher to the songwriting camp themselves. The songwriting camp may or may not have funding. So for example, we discovered that Norway and Norwegian camps are very supported through funding. Other camps, not so much, but they sign up for the camp and either attend in person, flying or train, and then staying usually within a very close space, either within the complex where the studios are themselves or very nearby. They can also attend via Zoom, which has become much more prominent since COVID, and even post-COVID, a lot of camps are still held online. These camps typically can last anywhere from 3 to 5 to 7 days. And once everything is organized, everyone starts to attend the camp. One thing to note just on the left-hand side is that songwriters who do not have a publishing deal are often offered a single song publishing agreement or single song assignment for the song that's written or the songs that are written there. So they have publishing representation for those songs only.
Good evening, Europe, and good morning, Australia, or vice versa, depending on where you're watching this from. My name is Jess Carniel, and I'm from the University of Southern Queensland in Australia. Yes, that controversial Eurovision participant. In this video, I'm going to explore the politics of fairness at Eurovision with a focus on both the rules of the song contest and on fan perceptions of fairness. In this, I hope to explore three main questions with you. How do politics affect fairness at Eurovision? How do fans perceive fairness and unfairness at Eurovision? And are rules a sufficient means for maintaining fairness? I've got Dummy In pictured here as an example of unfairness at the song contest. But first, how do we define fairness? If we take a Rawlsian approach to the idea of fairness, which I do in this video, it's fundamentally linked to the concept of justice and vice versa. According to Rawls, fairness can be understood as the right dealing between persons who are cooperating or competing against one another. This sounds like a lot like Eurovision to me. He further explains that a practice will strike the parties as fair if none feels that by participating in it, they or any of the others are taken advantage of or forced to give in to claims which they do not regard as legitimate. For a practice to be fair, it must satisfy the principles of those participating, and participants must be able to speak of and support their own positions. In other words, it must meet certain agreed upon values and criteria, and all must be able to speak openly and to query how those values play out in practice. Furthermore, rules suggest that by engaging in fair practice, participants generate prima facie duties and rights, specifically the duty to act in accordance with the practice and the right to expect others engaged in the practice to also submit to the rules. Now, if fairness is about establishing and acting according to agreed upon rules and principles, that should not lead to one group being taken advantage of by another or of having to act in a manner that compromises those principles, what then is unfairness? Interestingly, Rawls argues that unfairness is not necessarily about rule breaking, but rather taking advantage of loopholes or ambiguities in rules, availing oneself of unexpected or special circumstances which make it impossible to enforce them, insisting that rules be enforced to one's advantage when they should be suspended, and more generally acting contrary to the intention of a practice. Rawls is, of course, ruminating on how to create a fair and just society, but how might his ideas be applied to the Eurovision Song Contest? Eurovision is an event that people, broadcasters, artists, the EBU, are cooperating on for the purpose of competing with each other. One of the ways it seeks to manage the right dealing, as Rawls puts it, between these entities is to have a clear set of rules that are agreed upon by the host broadcaster, the EBU, the Eurovision Reference Group, and by extension, all the participating broadcasters and artists. The purpose of the rules is to ensure that everyone is working within the same parameters, which aim to ensure that everyone has a fair opportunity with the balance that the contest can control. For example, everyone must have a song no longer than 3 minutes, the song can't be released or publicly performed before the 1st of September, everyone must perform the vocals live, and the performance must be identical each time it's staged. What the contest rules can't control are things like individual countries' budgets that might enable them to be more elaborate with their staging, costumes, and choreography. The contest seeks to accommodate financial disparity to some extent by varying the participation fee according to the relative size and viewership, which Eurovision describes as the solidarity principle that the strongest shoulders carry the most weight. However, this has also led to the establishment of the Big Five, whose guaranteed grand final spot in exchange for being the largest financial contributors to the contest is often heavily criticised as an unfair advantage. Although many have pointed out that performing in the semi-finals, although risking disqualification, can have its own advantages in terms of, or non-qualification, can have its own advantages in terms of building momentum and rapport with the audience. The rules also determine how we, as the audience, can participate by establishing who we can vote, who we can vote for and when, how votes are cast and tallied. At the end of the day, the intention of the rules is to facilitate a smooth television production of a fair competition. Most famously, Eurovision has specific rules seeking to mitigate the implicit politics of running a contest between nations, which is now further fortified by the Code of Conduct and the Duty of Care guidelines that were developed in response to the various controversies of the 2024 contest. I am, however, just going to focus here on the baseline politics rule, that is, that everyone involved in the contest is responsible for safeguarding the interests and integrity of the ESC, and to make sure that the ESC shall in no case be politicised and or instrumentalised and or otherwise brought into disrepute in any way. Even the rule about non-politicisation seeks to establish a sense of fairness, as politicisation often works on the manipulation or exploitation of public sentiment, which is an important resource in the context of the contest. But the politics rules have demonstrated to be the most difficult to police. There are several reasons for this. First, requests by the EBU for broadcasters and artists to change their entries attracts public attention, sometimes even beyond that which the country might originally have garnered. Israel's October Rain is a good example of this, and Malta's Can't provides a less politically contentious example of this, although that has cultural and linguistic implications that we don't have time to go into here today.
Wir sind überall. Wir gehen auf Tauchgang in die Tiefen der Musikgeschichte. Gestern, heute und auch morgen. Wir sezieren Partituren wie ChirurgInnen und haben unser Ohr stets am Puls der Zeit. Wir verknüpfen Zusammenhänge und ermitteln genreübergreifend. Von Bach über Boulez bis Beyoncé. Apropos B, let's talk about Basel, unsere Stadt. Hier erproben wir Theorie in der Praxis. In Vorlesungen, Praktika oder Exkursionen. Unser Zuhause? Die Bibliothek, das Konzert, die Playlist auf deinem Handy. Wir verschlingen Bücher wie Basler Leckerli. Und wir schreiben Geschichte. Wortwörtlich. Wir verstecken uns im Rampenlicht. Als Musikjournalistinnen, Redakteure, Lehrerinnen, Kuratoren, Dramaturginnen, Wissenschaftler. Wie gesagt, wir sind überall. Überall, wo Musik ist. Das Musikwissenschaftliche Seminar der Universität Basel.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the second roundtable of the second day of the Eurovision's conference. This will also be our final engagement before we wrap up this year's edition. And those online have had the opportunity of seeing some of the content that has been prepared by the speakers in this panel, which I will now introduce. So the format will be, I'll ask each speaker to speak and present or summarize, highlight aspects of their research regarding challenges of fairness in Eurovision. And then we will have opportunity to discuss some of their ideas and also for you to ask questions, both those still with us in the room. And of course, my colleagues will be monitoring those of you that are attending online. So let me first introduce the members of the panel. So, and I thank you all for joining us. So we have here right next to me Barbara Barreiro Leon, University of Aberdeen. So thank you for joining us, Barbara. Then we will have here Jack Shepherd from the University of Mid Sweden. Thank you, Jack. Next to Jack, we have Jess Carniel from the University of Southern Queensland. Then we have Samuel Murray from Leeds University, and we have his colleague joining us online, Gemma Doyle from the University of Middlesex. Thank you, Gemma, for joining us online, and of course, you know, Sam for joining us in person. And at the very end there, we have my colleague Isabel Campello that will, with me, chair this session. So, and apologies, we're running a little bit late, but you know, you will be, I'm sure, very delighted to have stayed to know a little bit more about the ideas that the researchers that we have with us have in relation to fairness in Eurovision. So they've been devoting a lot of research time to these issues. And I will start with Barbara, and she produced a video for us to understand a little bit more about her research. And she offered us a case study on Chanel. And she has looked into issues around cultural representation and fairness. So I will ask now Barbara to introduce us a little bit to her research.
Thank you, Carla. My research usually has to deal with cultural memory and identities and how these are represented in Eurovision. But when it came to the idea of fairness or unfairness, it came to my mind the case of Chanel, who represented Spain in 2022. It was mentioned earlier, briefly earlier in the first roundtable. And when she won Benidorm Fest in 2022, there was a lot of accusations towards her that she was not Spanish enough because she is of Cuban descent. So then it came the idea of ethnicity and how some people or parts of the population think that some people are not fit because they don't look or they are not from the country enough, if that is a thing nowadays, especially. Then there also came the idea of she's too, let's say, sexy. And the dancing part and how, the sensuality of the dance and the lyrics as well. So there was accusations towards that from both sides. So people who think that if you are from Cuban descent, you're not Spanish enough, and if you are too sensual, you are not a feminist. So what happened here is like she suffered harassment from Spanish fans, Euro fans. Some of the members of the jury also suffer harassment. Family members of the jury members also suffer harassment. This escalated to the police. And the fact that because of the 60% of the weight in the votes were part of the jury, even the Spanish Congress had something to say about this. They were not happy because they said that it was unfair for 60% of the jury vote and 40% of the public vote. Of course, we know Chanel went to Eurovision in the end, so this didn't stop her. I have to say that when she put on the performance that she did, everyone was really, really pleased. No one complained about the Cuban descent, about the sensuality of the dance or anything else, but then people started to complain that Ukraine won just because they were at war, right? That was what they said. And the media, especially some newspapers that are not from, let's say, legitimate sources, opinion newspapers, they started to say like, yeah, Ukraine won, they could have won with any other song, it doesn't matter, but just because they are at war, it's not fair. Chanel should have won. Nothing is fair. In Spain, it was the jurors who gave Chanel the victory. In Eurovision, it was mainly the public vote that gave Ukraine the victory. However, no one was happy, regardless. She came third, a very, very respectable place, and the best ones in Spain since the 90s. After Eurovision, what happened was she was eliminated from Spanish media. And there's rumors, there's no knowledge, expertise knowledge on the topic because we cannot really have access to these elements and data and information somehow. But she kind of hinted that she was blocked by the Spanish broadcaster. There was some sort of disagreement just before the final in 2022. And she disappeared for a year. That's the long time that the contract with the broadcaster lasts, a year. As soon as the contract ended, she started to speak publicly. And then we found out that she was not able to perform the famous slow-mo choreography because there were some problems with the choreographer. So if you remember, last year in Malmö, she performed slow-mo, but with a different choreography. And that's the reason. So was it a fair treatment towards Chanel by the broadcaster? Was this artist, Chanel herself, treated fairly by first Spanish fans or Euro fans during Benidorm Fest? Was a fair winning of the Ukraine in 2022, sorry. And then after Eurovision, was she treated fairly? I think I already gave you the answers to these questions. And if you want to find more about these sources and things I'm talking about, you can go to the online presentation. I have all the sources, all the newspapers, and also some theory as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Barbara. Thank you. Yeah, you raised really important questions around voice and agency, and I'm sure we will have some questions afterwards after we do our first round. So now I'll pass on to Jack, that looked into the case of Israel inclusion in the Eurovision. Again, quite problematic and ongoing issue. Jack.
Yeah, hi. So I guess it's important to give a bit of backstory here that I come from a tourism studies discipline, and I did a PhD looking at tourism and peace building actually in Israel and Palestine. And the Eurovision Song Contest happened in Tel Aviv during that time, and I was really interested in the boycott movement against the Eurovision. So I traveled to Tel Aviv and was looking at really why people decide to ignore boycotts. What are the motivations to do that? Later on then I became, I guess because of that, I became more interested in the relationship between Eurovision and war. And as I was sort of looking over the history of like how these two things have interacted, what I kind of noticed was that even though war has always been there, it's only really recently become a thing that Eurovision has really paid attention to. So I often think of the example of during the Yugoslav wars, we had Bosnia's first entry, and Fazla, the band that performed, they essentially escaped Sarajevo, the siege of Sarajevo, with bare feet, like running. They tried twice to escape Sarajevo across the runway of the airport, made it there, sang a very moving song about, I think it was something about you have relatives somewhere else abroad, and this kind of separated love story. And they, came very low in the charts. Like nobody really gave a monkeys that Bosnia was at war. And we sort of, same thing we could say for aggressive wars. I mean, even though people point to the 2003 British invasion of Iraq and connect that to their 0 points, there's not really much evidence that there's actually much connection there. Whereas 2022, it feels like everything kind of changed. Suddenly, we see the first country banned because of war. We see the first country winning. I mean, I do think that they had a great song, but I think it's quite undeniable that there was a lot of public support for Ukraine, going through that voting. We saw the first case of an armed actor actually threatening a Eurovision. 2019, we also saw Hamas threaten the Tel Aviv arena, but we saw like bombs that had Eurovision slogans drawn on them that were then dropped on Ukraine. So, I mean, the relationship became very clear. And so as I was writing up that work in a book on Eurovision tourism and events, but hey, whatever, I sidetracked myself. It was kept being out of date, I was hoping that, okay, now the Russia-Ukraine war, it's going on, but I didn't expect a new war to come out again, 2023. And so we had Malmo and all the, drama around that, and again this year. So what I'm now thinking about is how the increasing presence of war in the contest is really pushing a lot of pressure buttons on the contest. In particular, in my opinion, this clash between its rule book, which really affirms that politics has no place in the contest, and its values, which it claims to stand for inclusivity and equality. And I think, as I made clear in the video, it's not just about the values it claims to have, but the values that it's seen to have. So in this case, it's seen to have the values of being a festival of peace and love. And for those who watched yesterday, we just talked about it, that during the semi-final, they actually said that this event started as a sort of movement for peace after the Second World War, which is not true. It was started as a broadcasting, like a test the broadcast capabilities of European broadcasters, but whatever, it's the myth that now everyone accepts. So Israel's participation essentially is putting the EBU in a bit of a tricky spot because, well, it's mostly because they decided to ban Russia in 2022. Well, they decided to go with their values on that occasion and to say that, this action is beyond the pale for us. Whereas now they're saying that actually it's the rule book is more important. I don't believe that the EBU does this because they feel they have a free hand. The decision in 2022 was very obviously the result of pressure by broadcasters who all felt that the values of the event were threatened by Russia's invasion. So it kind of now poses the question that there's very little pressure now. We've seen 3 broadcasters question Israel's participation. So, I think there's a lot of things we could talk about regarding that. But I will probably leave it there and just sort of, we'll move on.
Just just highlighting how important I think what you just said in terms of the changing narratives around the ESC and also viewing actually the contest as a geopolitical event, I think is really interesting. And it's a nice segue for Jess, that he's obviously been looking into the politics of fairness and also specifically the perspective of the fans. So it's nice to have here all different voices. Jess.
Thank you. Hi everyone. So obviously I come from Australia. As you can tell, do you want me to say no? And that was where I started out with my Eurovision research, and I've since moved into looking at the politics. And the paper that I gave in the video comes from my most recent research into participatory diplomacy, which is how fans use popular culture events like Eurovision as a form of political expression, specifically for trying to speak to both state and non-state actors like the EBU. So what I was talking about was the results of a survey that I conducted last year, right after that wonderful, completely non-controversial event. And even though fairness wasn't something that I was deliberately looking for, it emerged as a really clear theme in a lot of the responses from the participants. And in particular, there was, it was interesting to hear Alessandro talking earlier when he was asked that wonderful question about the politics. And he said quite clearly that he didn't feel that countries at war should participate in Eurovision, including those who were not the aggressors. And that was something that came out in the participants' responses as well, where they thought, anything where you're associated with war should be, everyone should be taken out. So Russia, Ukraine, Israel, Armenia and Azerbaijan, who I didn't actually talk about directly in the survey, but fans or the participants consistently brought up Azerbaijan and Armenia as another example that I think we frequently overlook, even, amongst us Euro scholars. So perhaps we need to address that a little bit more. But we're also led in some part by the media commentary on this, which does focus so heavily on Ukraine and on Israel. So in my paper, I also took a Rawlsian analysis of fairness, which was really, really useful because he's looking for this idea of a just society. And part of a just society involves a set of rules, but those sets of rules need to be subject to discussion and debate and consensus. And so it's been really, really interesting to see things like the code of conduct emerging, to see broadcasters saying, hey, we need to have a discussion about what's going on and who can participate under what circumstances. And that is a very Rawlsian point of view, that there should be discussion about how the contest is run. And so whether or not there is openness from the EBU is questionable. Certainly maybe it was a bit too late for the broadcasters to raise that as an issue, who knows. So also in that Rawlsian analysis, the role of rules was really, really important. And that was something that fans and my fan participants were very much engaged with, as well as they're trying to sort out, well, what is the fairest way of administering these rules to ensure that everybody feels that the results are fair, that everybody gets a fair chance. Another interesting aspect of fairness that emerged from that was around voting. There's always stuff about the vote, the public vote and the jury vote, and whether or not that's fair, and how we should split that balance. But the overriding consensus seemed to be that they felt that the jury saved last year's contest. Which is an interesting sort of about face for most fans. But some fans did say that they felt that this trend of jury winners as opposed to public televote winners undermines their agency as fans who participate in that public vote. But the other interesting thing that they raised was around the cost of voting. In many of them reporting that they actually don't vote because it's too expensive, and that they felt even if they could afford it, they felt that it was too expensive for other countries, or that certain phone carriers couldn't do it, or certain credit cards weren't accepted. I know for me, I didn't vote last year, but the year before, I had to log into a VPN from Australia in order to be allowed to vote, because it was just rejecting all of my details. So there are all these sorts of things around the accessibility of the song contest and whether or not everybody can participate in it in the same way, whether you are a fan or an artist or a broadcaster. So I think I might just leave it there.
Thank you, Jess. And sorry for the back and forth of the microphone. We're trying to be fair with only just one microphone. So, but it's really important really to consider all these hurdles around accessibility and participation. And you rightly focused on the voice here of the fans. And then we have Sam and Jenna that bring us the voices of the songwriters. And I think that's a really important voice to bring in. Thank you for focusing on that. So if you have a few words, Sam, and then obviously Jenna online can also participate, so without the need of me having the microphone in between.
Thanks. We'll try and make sure this double act works well. So Jenna and I originally started our research trying to look into what are the commercial opportunities for professional songwriters within the contest. And one of the things that started to emerge very, very quickly was this sense that a lot of songwriters feel that they are not valued as much as they used to be within the contest. Their role is diminished. And we suddenly kind of switched our main research focus to try and delve into this a bit more. So we originally did a pilot study with about 5 songwriters with some in-depth interviews. We've now expanded that. We've done a survey. We've got about 30 responses so far, but we're continuing to build that. And we've done in total about, I think it's about 10 or 11 interviews as well. So it's still an ongoing piece of research, but we really wanted to kind of share some of the themes and topics that have come up already. So in terms of kind of fairness, we were trying to look at what parts of the process of getting a song into Eurovision were perceived as fair and what were perceived as unfair or unclear. And it's quite interesting that in terms of the survey results that we've had so far, many people feel that actually submitting a song as a process is kind of really, really clear and really, really fine. If you're a songwriter going through a songwriting camp, the vast majority, again, think this is a fair structure. It's something they're used to from their own kind of professional practice. But the unfairness starts to come in around the kind of national selection processes. Quite a few of the songwriters said to us they felt that when they were participating in national finals, the winner was kind of already decided or put and set up in a place kind of win. Whether that's the case or not in reality, we can't find out, but it's important that we're understanding the songwriters perceive it that way. Equally, they felt in terms of their participation in the actual Eurovision, again, there was some opacity. Some talked about the position of the song in the running order where it was kind of selected. Obviously, yesterday we saw people drawing out, producer's choice out of the bucket as to which part they may participate in. Many songwriters are quite suspicious of that and the way that producers are kind of deciding where things go. Jenna, do you want to take the next theme?
Yes, so we also spoke with the songwriters about the idea of recognition and fairness when it came to recognition. It's surprising to find that over half of them felt that their song and their songwriting skills were not recognised by the EBU to the extent that they would want. And half also felt their songwriting skills weren't appreciated by the national broadcasters as well. So some kind of choice quotes from here are, I was not invited to the national selection. I was barely told anything. And another one was, I wouldn't have to have the trophy presented on stage, for example, to feel appreciated, but internal recognition would be nice. So that was some really interesting things came out there. 80% of the survey responses so far have said that the songwriters feel appreciated by other songwriters in the Eurovision writing community. And this very much rings true to the research that Sam and I did in 2023, 2024, where we identified a really supportive community and a feeling of togetherness with Eurovision songwriters and feeling like they were lifting each other up in quite a positive way, which was nice. And then finally, over half the writers felt their songs and songwriting skills were not recognised by fans and audiences. And just a final quote here was, it would be really nice to be acknowledged as somebody in the context of the contest as being worth something. So that kind of completes some of the headlines for recognition. So Sam, do you want to continue?
Yeah, just to the final one, I'll be very quick on this. We also tried to look at their experience engagement in the contest itself. The vast majority of songwriters do not attend the actual Eurovision Song Contest. Quite often they are asked to finance it themselves. They are not included in many cases in delegations. And, you know, about 50% of respondents had to cover their own travel, their accommodation, even their ticket, having to buy it through a general sale of the ticket, having to compete with everybody else. And many of them really, really felt that actually going to the contest was not actually financially viable as well. So we're continuing this research. We're still gathering data at the moment, but it's really, really fascinating to see that insight.
Thank you very much, Jack. Sorry, Sam and Jenna. I was now thinking, obviously, because of issues with time, that we may gather your insights into what next, potential solutions for the challenges that you uncovered, and we could do like a little round of that, and then we can invite, you know, those online and those here in the room to also ask some questions, if you don't mind. We don't have to follow the order, but maybe for the sake of logistics of the mic, Barbara.
So the question is, what next? My case is very specific, so maybe I can compare what they're doing with this year's contestant, Melody. I think there's a big change in how Chanel was treated back then by fans, by Eurofans in Spain, and how the visibility of the artist is greater now, especially given the fact that there's a lot of social media engagement with Melody, with other contestants as well. Also, we have to remember that when Chanel participated, it was the peak of COVID times. The people were still wearing masks, there was social distance, so there was not this sort of engagement. We have to wait to see what's happened, what's gonna happen with Melody after Eurovision. But I think they're trying to be, the Spanish delegation and the Spanish broadcaster, they're trying to be more inclusive as well. Also, Melody is not a newcomer. She is a star in Spain. She was a kid star since she was 8 years old. I grew up with her songs, and everyone knows her. Everyone in Spain knows her. She's a very beloved character. So that's actually something completely different to someone who's coming new into the business, a new face. And I think the majority of the Spanish fans love Melody. The majority of people watching Benidorm Fest wanted her to win because, again, she's a very recognizable face, and we knew from the outset that she would perform great in Eurovision. I know what happens in Spain when the final comes. No one will be happy because I anticipate Spain is not going to win. So they're going to be talking about no one likes Spain, this is unfair, why is Italy not giving us 12 points, and Portugal. Always the same kind of speech. And then, yeah, so I know that's next. That's it. I know it.
All right, hot take on Israel's participation, I guess. So as I say in the video, I think there's sort of three approaches the Eurovision can take to maybe not get out of this paradox that it has between its membership rules and its liberalism, but you know, maybe fumble through it. So option one, you could call it Operation Broadcaster. That's where, you know, as they say, they maintain that they are a competition of broadcasters, not of countries. That's the response of the EBU every time people challenge Israel's participation. They say, no, it's not about Israel, it's Cannes, and Cannes is threatened by the Netanyahu government, so we should support them. Fine, you can take that approach, but then I think we need to ditch some of the excessive focus on peace, love, inclusivity, equality, because that's not really what it's, you can't really have your cake and eat it. The alternative is Operation Peace and Love, where we actually decide to not have universal membership. We say that in order to take part in this event, you need to actually match our values. That might be, as we've said already, having warring countries not participate. It might mean that we start to say, okay, a country that is facing, has been described as perhaps doing a plausible genocide, maybe should not be at this Festival of Peace and Love. So that's the other one. And the third option would be, I think, the most likely one, which would be that we're probably never going to successfully deal with this, but we could at least have more open dialogue about it. As you mentioned, I think one part of this fairness is having the ability to openly discuss the rules, openly discuss the values, and I think at the moment there isn't really much freedom of speech on any of these issues. I just wanted to add, I don't know if anyone else felt this yesterday, but as they were talking about this Festival of Peace and Love, I was discussing with my roommate in the dorm this morning that it almost felt a bit like they weren't taking themselves seriously. It was hard to tell if this talk about peace and love was sarcastic or not. And I wonder whether this is some kind of defense mechanism to kind of, say that, hey, we're not even serious about ourselves either, so I don't know. I found that a bit interesting and just wanted to sort of throw it out there.
I think it was a bit sarcastic. I certainly laughed when they had that bit. But I'm going to take your third point, because that idea of having the open dialogue is what I think should be the next solution. Because my research is looking at this idea of participatory diplomacy as a part of public diplomacy, and part of public diplomacy is about listening, about those state and non-state actors listening to the stakeholders, and the broadcasters and us and the artists and the songwriters, we're all the stakeholders in Eurovision. So what I would like to see is some sort of symposium hosted by the EBU that has space for all of those stakeholders and, us. To have some sort of open and productive dialogue about it, because the dialogue that's happening in the media and especially on social media is not productive. Whereas I think if we got the adults in the room and had a conversation, that maybe we would be able to muddle our way through it in some way, hopefully.
We were quite lucky in our study that a lot of the songwriters gave us suggestions for what changes they want to see. So one of the things they mentioned was for the writers who are not performers to be presented with their trophies on stage. They wanted to have the credits that appear on the screen before a song for longer. They wanted an individual songwriter page on the website. And then one of our participants came up with an interesting suggestion of being like a kind of ambassador for songwriters to connect in with the EBU. So this kind of would connect with that idea of a symposium, being able to have that conversation because they feel no one's talking to them. Is there anything you wanted to add, Jenna?
Yes, just that they wanted writers who did make it to Eurovision were guaranteed a place in the green room, which is not always the case, and that there's just parity and fairness when it comes to paying, i.e. they should not have to pay out of their own pocket to attend a contest that is about their song.
Thank you very much to all of you. I think it's really interesting, the different points of view that you brought. Personally, I actually see it as this varied landscape of practice where there are different communities, and it's really important to work on, cross boundaries, let's say. And, as Jess also highlighted in terms of the diplomacy, the negotiation, and, like all of you also mentioned different narratives, for example, or different levels of engagement, different voices. So it's important to have all this in mind. But we want to have time for questions from the audience. Please. And Isabel.
I'll go around with the mic. I'm sure there are a lot of interesting questions from the audience. If not, I have a couple. So I'll just stand up and see who wants to begin.
You were talking about the third option. What would be an open dialogue, if I can say it like that? And that is about war and conflicts and everything. But how can you expect that from EBU if they cannot even be open if about an artist, yes, I come from the Netherlands, about an artist who is attacking or not? I mean, if you cannot be even open about that small thing what happened, how can you expect a dialogue about the bigger things?
Yeah, I don't expect it to happen. It was more a suggestion. But I think there are things that they could do that maybe wouldn't even necessitate dialogue. I mean, if you think about the beginning of 2022's event, there was a very explicit like pro-peace message with this kind of the John Lennon song at the beginning, and there was this kind of attempt to like actually be a festival for peace and love beyond just, you know, almost taking the piss out of themselves on stage about it. I felt it was a bit distasteful, to be honest, to kind of joke about peace and the event at this time. You know, there are things they could do, like in 2023 in Liverpool, there were a lot of things related to like Ukrainian culture that kind of were raised, and I feel like perhaps these are the kind of harmless things that can be done without necessitating the EBU to have some kind of personality change, which is unlikely, but I agree.
Okay, any other questions? Oh my God! So I'll ask a question, Barbara. So I'm very curious to understand if the public reaction, the negative public reaction to Chanel, was more because she was a Cuban Spanish singer, or because she was a pop singer singing a pop song in a sexy way, rather than a group of a folk song sung by a folk band, tangareras, right? Yeah, which somehow represented some of Spain's national identity. So what bothered the fans or the public the most? What's your opinion?
I think it was a little bit of everything, because the fact that Tanxungueiras won the public vote, it was a shock for me. Because it's not what people think of Spain, and especially I'm from the north. I'm just the region next to Galicia, so that is closest to me to flamenco. I have nothing to do with flamenco culture, but the Tanxungueiras song spoke to me, and actually they were my favorites, I have to say. Not biased or anything. But it's quite weird and quite odd that the majority of Spain, even Andalusia, voted for Tanxungueiras. Like a vast vote. I think there was a bigger discussion, especially when this reached to the Congress, about feminism. And how Tanxungueiras and then Rigoberta Bandini, who did a song about feminism especially, and how Chanel represented for these people the opposite side of the spectrum. Yeah, so it was not just about the song, I think it was more about feminism. And then when you open the Pandora box, everything will come into place. Oh, she's not Spanish enough. She's too sensual. She's singing reggaeton, which was not reggaeton, in fact. But every sort of accusations will come into place once you open this box.
Yeah. And how was the narrative changed when she became third? If it changed?
It did change.
It did change.
It did
so
change.
Suddenly she was the best?
She was the best.
Of course.
And,
for a while.
Yeah, and then the public vote in Eurovision was the worst. But she was the best. And it was all because that's what they said. Ukraine was at war, so the public, why would they know? When the public wanted them. So, you know, the two sides of the coin, we're never happy what we have. And then they gave us the other thing, and then we're not happy in the end. So, Eurovision fans, we are like that, I think.
I think the same happens in national selections, I think.
Exactly.
So, any other questions? Yes, Karen, please.
Thanks. I wanted to ask Sam and Jenna more about your research as regards the relationship of the nationality of the songwriter to the song, because I think there's somewhere hovering around there a fairness discourse about, is there any correlation between who wrote the song and what nation it performs for?
Yeah, it's quite interesting, especially also while we're having these discussions about the position of politics, the songwriters that we've spoken to really feel kind of separated completely from that space, and they are effectively there to do a job. So they will attend the songwriting camps because that is their kind of day-to-day job. And in fact, Jenna, I've got to say this before, I should have introduced Jenna a little bit. Jenna, is, alongside being a lecturer, is a professional songwriter, attends all kinds of songwriting camps as well. And it's basically to them, I think we got a sense it was kind of the day-to-day job, and they just kind of didn't deal with that or ignored that. Or what they would do, one of the things that we've seen kind of develop further is that more and more, and I think this year there's almost 80% of the songs have the artist with a songwriting credit. So the artist is the person effectively bringing, in most cases, the national perspective to that discussion. So they're trying to include, you know, their stories and their personal opinions as well. I hope that makes sense. I don't know, Jenna, if you wanted to add anything to that.
No, you summed it up perfectly.
But what if the singer is a Norwegian singing for Ireland?
Yeah. I mean, it just, that wasn't an issue that came up in our research, really. I think it was just, we're there to do a job. We spoke to, you know, for example, Swedish songwriters who go and write in different countries like Azerbaijan. They're paid. They're there to do a job, and they don't feel bad about doing that. So it hasn't necessarily been raised. It's quite interesting that we didn't get songwriters from a country raising that as unfairness of a Swedish songwriter coming into their selection. It wasn't kind of raised. Yeah.
Hi, I've got a question about the songwriting. More and more you see 20 people co-writing a song. What is behind this? Because by the time they start to share the money, there's hardly anything. Do they really impose the group?
I'll handle it for you.
Do they really impose to have so many people to co-write a song? What's the story behind?
Do you want to take this one, Jenna?
Yes, there's probably a number of factors involved, but a very big one is the role of the producer. The producers are very much writers in the room now. They don't just kind of obey the instructions of the songwriters. And after demos are completed at these songwriting camps, often the demos will be reworked and other people brought in. And then just the nature of songwriting camps, very typically you will have 4+ people in the room, including the producer. So you're naturally starting out with, a group of people anyway in this kind of co-writing situation, and other people are brought in to improve the song as much as possible. There didn't seem to be any sense that songwriters felt precious about the number of people, because of course the number of people would affect their split. It was mainly about having the song be the best it could be and getting it to Eurovision. Do you want to add to that, Sam?
The only thing just to add is I think we did a bit of research on this year, and I think it's Armenia has the most number of songwriters, 10. 10 songwriters for their track.
I'm afraid that's all we have time for. But we can continue discussions for those here in person, somewhere in Basel. For those online, just continue following Eurovisions, and you have time to actually look at the videos that the researchers present in the panel have prepared, and I'm sure you will find them online and be able to get in touch with them and follow their research. So what we are really trying to build with Eurovisions is really also a community that is very inclusive, community not just of researchers, of fans, of all kinds of professionals that are involved in Eurovision. So please join me for a round of applause to our speakers in this roundtable. Thank you very much. And now I invite you to, go back to your seats, and I will ask the Eurovision's team to join me here on stage so we can wrap up. And also the representative of the University of Basel, please, Anna.
We start with Anna.
Mhm. So this ends. Yeah, this ends. Again, wonderful conference. It's incredible how quickly all this work accumulates to fruitful and peaceful so far discussion. And fair, and thanks to a wonderful team and to a wonderful host. A big thank you to the Musikwissenschaftliches Seminar at the University of Basel, and ask Hannah Walsdorf to say some words of goodbye.
Well, what can I say? Thank you so much for being here. We are lucky. We consider ourselves lucky, and we are proud to have hosted this wonderful conference. It gave a lot of food for thought. It was a great experience to have you here. And what can I say more? Enjoy Basel. Have a great party on Saturday night, and hope to see you again somewhere someday. Thank you very much. Thank you. And of course, I thank all the members of this institution, of the Musikwissenschaftliches Seminar, who made this possible, who worked in the background and have done a wonderful job. Thanks to all of them who are not in the room now, but thanks to them.
So I'm following the rules, or I'm skipping the rules? So
off script, go ahead.
Off script. So we are online. We are on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. You can find the videos of these 2 days conference, as well the videos of our speakers. They prepared special videos for us, and you can find them on YouTube. And I like as well to thank you everyone to be here. Visit our website, follow us, and subscribe our newsletter, and see you next year. I don't know where, but at least online. And I pass the word to my wonderful colleagues. I'm Sofia Vieira Lopes. I'm from Eurovision's team. So thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Yesterday, at the end of the first day, I said this was our first semi-final, and today is the second semi-final. And then we got hundreds of emails of people asking Wilfred, then what is the grand final of this conference? And actually, it doesn't exist. We don't have a winner. There is no closure, because this is an open ending. It means that I really hope that you've seen people, you've seen publications, you get inspired to write about Eurovisions, to think about Eurovisions. If you're a student and you're thinking about writing your bachelor's thesis, but you're afraid to do it, we're here. You can talk to us, you can get it done. Whether you're a fan, whether you're a journalist, whether you're a scholar, or just randomly walking by and joining in, I'm encouraging you actually to take the open end and join us next year, but also let us know what you're doing, right? Because Irvin is gathering people for the Science Slam, people are presenting. We need to know what you're doing. Therefore, no grand final, just goodbye, and see you next year, maybe in Austria, who knows?
Thank you, Wilfred. So yes, indeed, we are the gift that keeps on giving, but only possible because you participate in this community, and it's a wonderful community. And from my part, I just want to highlight a few more thank yous. To Sophia and Isabel's institution, the Institute of Ethnomusicology at Nova University in Lisbon. They are, a big support that enables us to continue, because we are not funded, how academia is. We just really enjoy trying to bring people together around Eurovision studies. We also want to thank OJAE Portugal, and once again to the University of Basel. And a special thank you for the people serving the buffet, the coffee break. Wonderful. Thank you very much.
I'm afraid I have not much more to add to what my colleagues have just said. I'll just remind you that we have a webpage, eurovisions.eu, that we have a Facebook channel, also a YouTube channel, and please subscribe our newsletter. And with that, I will say my name and say bye-bye till next year. Not in Austria, in my opinion. Anyway, Portugal. Yeah, Netherlands, okay, why not? Okay. Oh, that would be great. But a little bit expensive for us anyway. Okay. So, my name is Isabel Campillo.
My name is Carla Figueira.
I'm not Petra Mede, I'm Wilfred van Dellem.
Sofia Vieira Lopes.
Irving Walter. And this is the Eurovisions team.
Wir sind überall. Wir gehen auf Tauchgang in die Tiefen der Musikgeschichte. Gestern, heute und auch morgen. Wir sezieren Partituren wie ChirurgInnen und haben unser Ohr stets am Puls der Zeit. Wir verknüpfen Zusammenhänge und ermitteln genreübergreifend. Von Bach über Boulez bis Beyoncé. Apropos B, let's talk about Basel, unsere Stadt. Hier erproben wir Theorie in der Praxis. In Vorlesungen, Praktika oder Exkursionen. Unser Zuhause? Die Bibliothek, das Konzert, die Playlist auf deinem Handy. Wir verschlingen Bücher wie Basler Leckerli. Und wir schreiben Geschichte. Wortwörtlich. Wir verstecken uns im Rampenlicht. Als Musikjournalistinnen, Redakteure, Lehrerinnen, Kuratoren, Dramaturginnen, Wissenschaftler. Wie gesagt, wir sind überall. Überall, wo Musik ist. Das musikwissenschaftliche Seminar der Universität Basel.